you need today, right? Everything's good on your end? Ms. Storrs, I think you are driving as fast as we can go here to get through one or two last-minute items, and then we're going to recap suggestions.
That sounds great. I appreciate that, Mayor. So I've been keeping a running list just of various requests that have come over this last week. So if you guys will bear with me, I'm just going to start kind of going over a couple of things and then also handing out a few things. So the first thing that I'm going to hand out is that we had a request for a copy of our financial policies. So I've got a copy for everybody here, and I want you to know there's a reason why it starts on page 15, and this is because this is a print straight out of our budget, our approved budget book. This matches exactly what's online. And so this is part of a much bigger document. And so it starts, our financial policies start kind of, maybe a quarter of the way down on this page 15, and it goes all the way through the last page in your packet, which is page 27, and it ends essentially right before there's a section that starts on budget priorities and short-term initiatives, which is kind of it's kind of an overview of what was in our current year budget. So I wanted to make sure you all had a copy of this, and I can go over anything you would like me to now, or if y'all want to take it and digest it a little bit and we can talk more later, or whatever you guys would like.
Oh, I appreciate that. I think, especially in kind of what I'm hitting on, I would want to review all this and then get back to you. But let me ask you, just so I don't go down a path that's not as beneficial, like under reserves, I see it's basically 2 paragraphs. Mm-hmm. Do we have formal policies that would speak to this? And then this is a summary? Because if that's the case, I would want to read the actual policy.
So these are your policies.
Okay, so this under reserves is everything that we're operating under.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
As it speaks to fund balance or available funds, any of those definitions, all that you as staff has to operate under is this.
That's correct.
So if you were asking for a policy, are you asking for us to produce something that would state different? Or are you asking for us to just read through this and maybe interpret something different or to amend this paragraph?
I would say if you're wanting to make a change, you'd be wanting to change something in this document.
Okay, great.
Yes,
yep.
And we can absolutely do that if y'all would like. It can be done, I think, a couple of ways. We have made some changes in the past through, I believe it was a resolution when we did it mid-year, but then this gets approved in an ordinance along with your budget each year. So we could make changes prior to the adoption of your budget, the one we're working on. You could approve it through ordinance at that point. Or if you wanted to make changes after you have approved your budget, we could always do that as well, and you could adopt the changes mid-year.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't think we're under a time constraint. I don't want council to feel like this is something you got to get figured out in the next week or two. If you do, I think that's great. But then we could always do this in a resolution.
Yes, and if as council's looking through this, or if you all have any questions about anything, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'd love to have some discussions with you or provide some more insight on it if needed.
Hey, thank you for pulling these together.
You're welcome.
It'll show you that I don't read through the front end of the budget, evidently, since I didn't see them.
No, you are just fine.
Like any good council member, I go straight to that back page bottom line.
Well, and to the meat of the budget, I completely understand that, where the numbers are at.
No, but that's good that they're all right there, and then I think for our public, it's a reminder of what we're working underneath.
That's great. Okay, so the next item that I had on my list is, and please forgive me, these are not in any particular order. I was jotting down notes as we went through the last few days, so these may be a little bit kind of out of order. But the next one we had talked about was related to the parking garage at the airport. And so I got some information related to that. There is an agreement in place where we have a management agreement, and the terms of those agreement, we pay an annual management fee. As Mike Connor mentioned yesterday, we changed management groups just this past year, they started May 1st of 2023, and this first term goes through April 30th of 2028. We pay them monthly, but it's an annual management fee of $50,000 per year. Okay, so then in 2028, it steps up to $55,000 per year for 1 year, and then one final year, May 1st, 2029 to April 30th of 2030, and it's $60,000. So we're locked in for that $50,000 through 2028, then 1 year of $55,000 and 1 year of $60,000. So we don't have a full fiscal year yet on with this new group. As Mike mentioned, their management fee is a little bit less than the last one, but I just wanted to kind of go over. We had revenues. Well, I'm going to talk about the fiscal year 2020, 2021. So it ended September 30th, 2021. We had revenues of $2.2 million. We backed out about $41,000 for credit card fees. We made a $501,000 payment to the vendor for a profit of $1.7. That was 9/30/2021. So in 21-22, we had revenues of approximately $3.2 million, payment to the vendor of $605,000 approximately. And so that created a profit of $2,633,000. And then last year was our blended year, where part of the year was under our old management group, and part of the year starting May 1st, we were under the new management group. We had revenues of just slightly under $4 million, and that's net of credit card fees. We made a payment to the vendor of $630,000, and it was a profit of $3,362,000. So hopefully that helps a little. As Mike was mentioning yesterday, that this group does their management fee is slightly lower than the one we had previously. So yes.
If I could, I got to jump in there.
Sure.
And I say this with the utmost, candid respect.
Okay.
I definitely want to feel and know that I am not having to ask such a specific question to get the right answer back.
Okay.
So my line of questioning yesterday was, how much do we pay our vendor? What's our contract look like? And so they said $50,000 a year. And I asked specifically, is there a commission? Are we doing, no commission, no nothing. So today's numbers come back that we're paying our vendor $643,000.
Yes.
Yes.
So we're covering their expenses, like their personnel expenses to run the facility, plus a management fee. So to your point yesterday, when you were saying what's our profit, what's their profit, well, the management fee would be their profit on this agreement.
So see, and for me, that's awful.
Okay.
That's such bad communication. And I'm not asking what's their profit. I'm asking what is the deal? And so I was wanting to read the contract, but then I said at the end of it, I don't need the contract. I mean, if they're charging us $50,000, what I'm left thinking is that somehow they're paying their labor, to man that, and that they're good with 50. So it doesn't make sense on the surface.
Okay.
And so today, what it is it's a report back from finance that, no, of course we would pay their labor, right? So. That is so difficult in running an 800-page budget, where we are very, very reliant on not only the fact that we're asking good questions, but that you guys are hearing and listening to the intent of what we're discussing. So I'm asking, hey, are we doing a good job in this asset that we're looking at? Even to the point of what does it look like if we're running it ourselves? What does it look like if we're adding another garage? Why does my director not know that $643,000 is the check that he stroked out of that $4 million? And why was that not offered earlier?
I don't know that I can answer for our airport director, but.
Well, I'll have to get with him to answer that. But yes, I understand your concern there, Mayor.
Well, my concern is communication.
Okay?
And the communication that is lights on business, everything's out in front, everybody's dealing with it. We're trying to help. Y'all are trying to help. We have to be able to trust that the monies that we can't see in this budget, that you guys are volunteering information, that we're not specifically asking for, that we want, but we don't know the right question to ask. So I'm talking about a $4 million contract or a $4 million revenue asset, and we're spending $650,000 a year. And so, yes, I mean, like the follow-up question to that would be like, well, how many hours are we staffing that? What does their hour look like? What's that pay? Is it an automated system? Could we automate this and not have staffing and personnel? And then we're in a contract till 2028. Great. Like, I think that's fine. I'm looking down the road a little ways, but to put a fine point on it, do we have to specifically ask, like what is the labor and what is their overhead and how much are their, workers' comp and their match and I don't know how much more clear we could have been. I know better than to know that 50 grand is a good deal for somebody to take the liability of running the airport, right? That's just why on the surface it doesn't make sense. So we still pay them $643, and they pay their employees.
Mm-hmm. That's my
They pay. Well, that's your understanding, or we know that.
Well, I would have to pull that contract, and I can certainly do that. I can get that.
So
contract
we could still be paying their insurance and writing them a check for $643.
No, the 643 is our full 630 last year was our full
630,
amount,
sorry.
including the management fee.
Okay, so
That was all of our costs associated with it, so payments to them.
okay, so I would like to verify that. I would like to see what's the total hours worked, how much do they pay their employees? Are we verifying that, or do they just produce? Is it like a average? This is how much we need per month.
No, I think they send like a detailed statement every single month
Okay.
when we run it. So, but yes, we can get you detailed information on that. Yes, I can get you a copy of the contract. We can show you, a monthly statement that we get from them that we pay off of if you
Yeah,
need
would
to.
love to see. Are we paying based off of a produced invoice? So who's verifying that invoice? What else is in there? Is there additional admin fees that are just blocked out at another 50? This compiled with some of our medical stuff really makes us feel like we've got to dig, and we don't want to dig. We want to have policymakers over here. And so we've got to know that if we're asking policy questions, you guys have a shovel ready and you're ready to go do the digging.
Laura, I would say of the 630, I think we'd just like to see the expense.
Like
of
the
it.
breakdown
Just the
of it.
breakdown of
Sure.
expenses. I don't
Yeah.
need to see the contract.
Yeah.
But what are we paying? That was the question yesterday, and that 50 seemed a little odd that they've got their employees and they're running that thing for 50. But just a breakdown of where did that 630 come from?
Okay, yeah, I can absolutely get you more
this new
detail
one,
on that.
because you said this was a blended.
Yeah,
This
that was
the
a
old.
blended year.
So with the new one, what expenses? What compiles that? I know it's not 630 to them, but whatever the expenses are, those monthly.
Yes, we can certainly get all of that put together for you guys. So I apologize, I did not bring the amount of details that y'all were looking for. So,
And what'll be true here is that I misunderstood what you're looking for as well, and so but as staff we will definitely get you every information we can get. And so we may not have it on the spot, we may not know it off the top of our heads, but as we saw here, we will definitely get the information back to you and then clarify and do more clarification. So we do want to be open, but we'll do our best to try to understand the intent of questions as best we can. But please, if we misunderstand, just please clarify for us, and we'll keep on going.
I think we just want to be the most efficient, right? I mean, obviously, that's what we're looking for is can we run this thing ourselves and at a better cost? Well, if we just know that 50 is that there's no way to compare that, And I'm guessing that he's probably looked at that. I would hope to say, the liability and everything else of having a third-party contractor
running
do
it.
it.
Yeah.
Then hopefully it is better.
Okay.
But I think that's where we want to look at and say, well, can we in-house this thing?
Okay.
And do a better job.
Okay, sure, we can absolutely do that. And I will tell you, I got a copy of a huge spreadsheet. And so, I mean, this is on me. I kind of brought summary information, but yeah, there is breakdown by every single month, everything from, the payroll expense, the salary and wages piece, overtime, payroll taxes, there's insurance expense, and then it breaks down just to like general operating expenses that are incurred. And there are credit card processing fees that are in there separately. And then it comes down. So they are checking this every single month and sending that detailed, like itemized amount every single month. So
Do you see the profit?
What their profit is? I would have to look through this report a little bit more, Mayor. This is really outlining like their total costs.
You don't need to volunteer that here?
Oh.
As a private company, I wouldn't try to do that, but I'm just curious if you can see their profit.
So I would have to look through this to see to make sure that I understand what's all on this spreadsheet. So yeah, I could look through that for you.
Are you looking more for, like if a contractor did a bid, his O&P? Is that what you're looking for? Like,
Yeah,
I want to see this, but
I mean, if they're as detailed as showing you, well, here's how many man hours we have, and here's the average pay per man hour, and then here's the dollars that go in match and payroll taxes and whatever, then they've done the work for me, and all I need is that net number.
and from what you're saying, it sounds like it's 50. It's like, we don't care. Y'all are going to pay the expenses of our employees, insurance, the whole deal. Sounds like that's the monthly, and then we're just charging the 50. But
Yeah,
I don't know if that's
and I mean,
true.
I think for me as a private business person, I doubt that.
Yeah.
I think I have a management fee of 50,
Right.
and I'm going to show you that's my consulting fee or
Right.
my contract fee, and then I'm going to engage with you with a set markup. So like perhaps because what I understood and on my side of the communication is that you relayed that we were paying for their labor, paying for all of those things, but that then their profit was 50 grand. If that's in their contract, then that's what it is.
Well, and I will verify that, but that's my understanding of it. But Mayor, I would like to verify that, just to make sure that is for sure how
So
it reads.
specifically what I'm asking for is, can I identify a $300,000 profit from a $50,000 contract? And yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
So I want to see if that exists.
Okay.
So to make sure I understand, so you're looking for their profit identified in the spreadsheets, or I'm trying to make sure I understand too.
Yep. Based on what I understood here, is that we would write them a check for $50,000 a year. That's their contract fee. That's all they make. And then we are reimbursing them the cost of their labor and whatever general expenses they have, and let's say payroll taxes, right? So if all that totals up to 630 or less the 50, so let's say it totals up to 580, then we know it's costing them $580,000 to run that parking garage. However, if it's not costing them that, then I have an issue perhaps with the contract, because that's not what the contract would have said, at least the way it's been explained here today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so going a completely different direction now. The question had come up about what had the city council expected to save from the changes made at the library in the current fiscal year budget. Oh, I apologize. And so the option that was decided on was to produce a total savings of $201,401. And the other question was, what was the total cost? Do y'all remember we had talked about there were 5 of those digital literacy coordinators that were put into the library budget, and that those would be paid for out of ARPA for the next few years. So 5 of those on an annual basis, assuming they're filled the entire year, that comes in at $277,000. So what I'm going to do in your budget is I'm going to put a revenue line item in there, and you will see that $277,000 coming in to offset the cost of those 5 positions. Does that make sense?
Of ARPA dollars?
Yes.
Okay, but that's only going to be,
For a little while. I mean,
Right.
it'll go through 2036 as long as the money's available to do that. And then if we don't have another revenue source, those positions will go away.
And Amanda had said that they are under
Yes.
that understanding that if there's no grant money available, you don't have a job.
That's correct. Yep, that is correct. Any questions on that? Oh, go ahead, Tom.
We didn't approve that, did we? I
It-
mean, that sort of backdoored in, didn't it?
So it was part of the broadband funding. It was broadband and digital literacy funding that was approved through the very first ARPA allocation.
But was it funded for libraries? Was it funded for those positions? Or who made that decision?
So Rich has kind of been leading those broadband efforts, and this was part of those broadband efforts. And he had decided that probably library was the best place for that to reside. So, I mean, they're not necessarily library employees, even though that's where they're going to be housed, just because it's more of kind of a community location.
I guess what I'm getting at is we planned on a $200,000 cut,
Yes,
but in reality, we have a $277,000 over budget, correct?
it's going to have revenue coming in to
But, I
offset
mean,
it.
it's coming in, but it was never approved by us. Should it have been approved by us?
Well, it was approved kind of as the broadband project. So
When was that? When was that actually done?
that was done 2 years ago. It has been. Yeah. It was approved in the very first, I'd have to look it up, but it was a couple of years ago.
I'm just going back to my memory from last year.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't talk about these 5 positions.
No, we did not.
So these are new positions,
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
and we're taking money from broadband
Yes.
to pay for them.
Yes.
But I would have thought that would have come through us at some point in time, that we would have said, oh, yeah, that's a good idea to spend the money, or is that not in our purview?
We can absolutely bring that to you guys. Yeah.
I don't know, is that the way it should be, or is the way we did it the way it should be? I'm just trying to
Well,
understand where we're at.
absolutely. No, I understand. And I think, and this kind of went back to some of the conversations that we had a couple of days ago related to the grants. You know, the grants, we put a budget in here and it's just an estimate. And then once we get the grant award in, we're basically told how to utilize the money, and then they start spending the dollars to meet the objectives of what the grant is. And I think, I'm sorry.
Sorry to jump in. This is probably, I know we're directing it this way, but actually I think this would go really towards Mr. Path and like, how would you like to run your organization? You know, because this would be something where, for us, the trust would be in the accountability with you, and we might get a report, but then you may be comfortable in letting directors, you know, kind of pull different grants and funding in. So what do you normally do, and would this be something in more of a policy direction that you would have felt like, yeah, those positions should have come back to council because they could have been used for multiple things? Now, I know you don't know what all the options were, but there would have been multiple options for these $270,000 worth of positions.
Yeah, there would have been options. We received ARPA back in Paris as well. So, yeah, I can't speak to the context, what happened 2 years ago with staff and council at the time. I don't know why or it was not brought to the council. Typically, again, under my management, typically we do bring new positions to the council, or at least I make them aware of that. If I've been given authority to create a position, then I'll do that. But typically, new positions are brought to the council during the budget process.
Okay.
So in this process here, I would say that my question is, are these positions, have they been filled? Or
There's one, I think they had one that they were trying to fill, but no, they're vacant at this point.
So at this point here, I'd say the council, you can either authorize us to fill them, or we can reroute the money to some other purpose.
So I think that's a great directive from our new city manager in the way in which if you're wanting that from us, then what we would need to know is what are the other qualifying purposes, and then what were the other asks. And so some of this is staff kind of working in and amongst themselves and council not knowing. So if we hadn't have asked maybe for that breakdown in the library budget, we would have just approved these 6 positions, correct? 5 positions. But we wouldn't have known that we approved them outside of us going through that budget to that depth, right? So moving forward, Mr. Path, I think for you, it would be, you and I are seeing eye to eye on, we definitely want you to direct where you want them, but then for there to be a process where you would bring it to council and you would say, hey, or even individually, this is my thought, this is what we're trying to do. Do you agree? It could go here, it could go there. Because I don't know that these positions couldn't sit, and I know they can't. But I don't know that they couldn't sit in public safety somewhere, like police, which would have been a priority and a pillar that you would have known we were trying to push to. So library is important, but not something that we were trying to grow, and I think we've ended up doing that inadvertently.
Yeah, and again, it sounds like this is maybe decided a couple of years ago. So again, I don't know the context at the time back then. I don't know the factors involved. I don't know what you may or may not have seen. Again, I started 4 days ago, and so it's just kind of hard for me to kind of.
It's been a good 4 days.
Know what's happened here, and
Already going to the excuses there, are you, Grayson? Okay, I see how
I'm
this
going to use
works.
it for a while too. So trust me. And but no, this is one that had it been fresh today, had we had grants today, money first time seeing and everything. We would have brought it to you, say, okay, here are the options. This is our recommendations. Typically, I would bring to you my recommendations for projects, whether it's a car or a pipe or whatever it is, and then council would then direct me otherwise from there. So, but usually new staffing, I would bring it to the council as well, or at least I would inform you about it before I did it. So,
Okay. Yes, sir.
I think it'd be a good idea to bring us the positions and show us where they can go with the grant funding.
yeah. So because we're talking about ARPA funds.
We're talking about ARPA funds, yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so we can revisit that. And the nice thing about grant funds are, even, whether you get them budgeted or not, they're grant funds. They're there, and so it's always nice to budget all your funds. But at the same time, the grant funds are not going anywhere. So even if we don't get it done in time for the budget process, we could come back to it later as well. But we could look at either positions or, because again, when you look at grant funds, these are going to be very temporary positions, and so I would be careful about doing any certain kind of positions, because you're going to probably need them down the road, and you have to be backfilled later on. So
Yeah, this may be a question for Laura. So these 5 positions, were these slated back when we originally got the ARPA dollars? Because my understanding is we were given excess ARPA funding to spend not too long ago, correct?
So this money that was earmarked for digital literacy was part of the initial ARPA allocation that we got. So we got 2 rounds of ARPA, and I apologize, I don't remember if it was 2020 and 2021, but this was allocated through that very first round of ARPA money. It wasn't any kind of excess ARPA money or anything. It was part of our initial allocation of ARPA dollars.
So in the initial allocation, was it slated for these 5 positions or this funding to go towards?
So digital literacy and broadband was one of the areas that council approved and authorized. And so we've had to report into the federal government, kind of like the progress of the planning of this. And so we have reported in that the plan to do these digital literacy coordinators, but, we could certainly, I guess, make a change on that by all means, so.
Okay. I was just really curious. I'm just trying to think back.
And the other thing is,
This was slated. Why didn't we know about it, like last budget, that these 5 positions were going to go?
well, and I think part of it was the timing related to the rollout of some of the other broadband efforts, because they were working first, to get more of the fiber laid across the community. Oh, and yeah, that's true. Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate that. Yeah, and this is more in conjunction with coming online about the same time Emma is set to go online as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
And we can certainly get you all some options on this. This is funding that has to be committed or obligated prior to December 31st of this year, or we lose the funding. So
This was, if I remember, you said this was driven by Rich.
yes, that's
Rich?
correct. Mhm.
Okay, just
Yeah.
because this is his.
Yes, and I'm so sorry. I mean, I can speak a little bit about this, but I think Rich could certainly give a lot more details. And I know he hates that he couldn't be here for all of this, but we can certainly get you some more information on it and some further options as well, if you would like.
Real good.
I'd like to go to page 377 real quick. That does go over the library. And what I'm trying to do is find out where our $200,000 savings showed up. Because when I look at this, we have $4 million in 22-23. It cost us $4,039,401 to operate the library.
Yes.
But then we went up and we budgeted $4,370,189.
Yes.
Did we originally budget $4.5 million last year?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then I get over here on the right-hand side, and we didn't save $200,000. We saved less than $100,000.
So, and that's where you're going to have a revenue line item that I'm going to put in here that is going to have $277,000 coming in to offset that. So that'll.
And when did those
happen.
people come on board?
So I think they're looking to start hiring. They had hired one, but I think.
No, so they weren't. We didn't pay them this year.
Do what in this year?
I'm not talking about the budget. I'm talking about. So we've not paid them this year,
No, I don't think so.
but we're still going to finish only about $90,000 in savings versus what we spent last year.
Yes.
So where's our other $100,000 that we were going to save?
So our budget had been 4.5 million, and so we cut it back down to 4.3 million, and we're actually going to spend closer to around 4 million.
If I can interject, would the difference have been those employee pay increases would have pushed that
Yes.
up, so your
From last year's.
realization wouldn't be a good number to subtract from?
That's correct.
But I definitely see where Councilman Simpson's going. We're having a hard time seeing that we realize that, and then also having the additional monies plugged in. We're still growing the budget every year.
And then we're going up to 4.55 this year. But that's offset by 200 and some thousand
Yeah,
dollars.
277,000.
So it's going to cost us $300,000 more to operate the library next year than it did this year.
How long do those grant funds, well, those are gone. One more year, right?
They go out through 2026, the end of 26.
So we are adding these positions, but they are temporary positions.
That's correct.
So if we net out the revenue, that 4.559 would look like how much?
4,282,000.
And so it's still going to cost us over $300,000 more to operate the library in next year than it did this year.
Based on actuals.
But yeah, that's based on us budgeting with those positions filled for the entire
So
year.
we've eaten up our savings
So the
and then
savings,
spent another $100,000.
the savings was from 4.5 million last year is what we had originally.
Well, I
budgeted.
know, but I'm just looking at what we actually spent. So we figured out how to operate the library at 3.9, but next year we're going to spend $300,000 more.
Well, and that's our best estimate at this point in time. So those aren't actuals through the end of the year. They're part actuals this year. Like, for instance, it looks like your electricity budget is potentially going to come in a little bit lower, but we still have the rest of the year, the highest months of the year to come. So that number may change a little bit as well.
Well, but we didn't, I mean, when we're forecasting, we're not forecasting that or thinking about it?
We're trying to, as best as we can.
Okay. Well, it's just hard for me to kind of get I think, man, we're really making progress. We're trying to save, do other things. And then when I look at this, I don't see any realization of the save. I mean, I guess we spent it, but I just wondered where the $200,000 went. But
So I think the better expenditure is over on salaries. So 2 million, almost 2.1 million in 21, 1.97 million in 22, 1.99 million in 23.
That's our best guess at this point.
Right.
That's not an
But
actual.
Let's say it's close. And then 2.3 million, but in that is the 230,000.
Yes.
So you're $100,000 over budget on this department in your labor expenses. So, is that correct? In the
Where
way
are
in
we
which
at?
we had our revised estimate at 199,
Yes,
and so,
but
You-
the budget was actually 2.2 million in that line item. So it
Right,
looks like
so-
we're going to underspend a little bit.
well, 2.3 less the 230 would be 207, right? So actually, you're 80,000 over budget, or 70,000 over budget.
Over budget from what?
From-
From revised estimate to department request? or-
Yeah.
Well, that's showing the positions filled the entire year, where
Oh, I
we've
see.
had a few vacancies or for
Yeah,
a
so it's
period of
projecting
time.
that, but
Yeah.
then I'm going with Councilman Simpson here. I'm not sure how our department request would be increased.
Let us revisit that, please, and so we can come back to that if we can. So I know that from my experience with budgets, obviously you budget for positions to be filled, and then they don't, or you have some people come or go, or you pay out sick leave, you pay out this or that, and so
Okay.
actually, I mean, there's always a lot of fluidity in these things here, but we can take a note of this and try to get back some information back to y'all.
So can I ask a quick question before we move on? So budgeted 2023 was 2.24, or 2.224, 2.25, right? That's what was budgeted for 23, for salaries,
Oh, yes. Wait.
yeah?
Yes. sorry.
So our actual estimate, let's just call it 2,
Okay, yes,
right? So we're $250,000 under,
yes.
right?
That's what we're estimating. yeah.
Estimating, $250,000 under. But the ask is 2.3, but that's 230 of that 2.3 are these positions,
Mm-hmm.
which we're going to have an in and an out. We're going to have ARFA money in,
Yep,
out, so that's a wash,
Yes.
really.
Yes.
Depending on where we put these people, if we do keep these people, whether they go in library or they go anywhere
Somewhere
else,
else, yeah.
it's going to be the same.
Yes.
It's going to be an in and an out.
that's correct.
So kind of a wash. So if we take that 230 out, what Mayor said, we're at 2,070,000, right? Is that right?
Roughly.
Yeah,
Roughly, which is about even of what we are projecting to finish the year.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty much even.
yes.
Yeah. Which that would account for potentially this changes in
Sure.
personnel, yes.
Right. So we're virtually even on salaries. If we get rid of this whole thing,
Yes.
we're virtually even. So really $250,000 under of what was budgeted 2023.
Yeah,
So we're $250,000 under projected, and looks like really the ask, if we get rid of this position, we're still, I mean, maybe not $250,000, but close. I mean,
Yes, yeah, if we end up removing these IT-based library positions, yes, you're going to see basically 199 over to about 205, 206 kind of a thing. So kind of a creep
Pretty
increase
even.
there. So pretty even, yes. It looks to me like staff have fine-tuned the numbers based off last year's budget process.
Yeah.
Either we've cut positions or
So there's no
things have
increase.
changed or
I
we had
guess
yeah.
what I'm trying to say is there's no increase in salaries, or the ask is really no increase. It's these positions that have created the increase.
Yes, these
But
positions
we're-
have increased.
But our net savings to Councilman Simpson's, we're $250,000. We netted $250,000. Now, still want to know, we still budgeted.
Well, I mean, I see that, I mean, again, I know I look at the budget here, but I look at, actually, we only spent $10,000 less on personal services in 23 than we did in 22.
and again, that's just a projection at this point.
Well, I hope okay.
And you have to also remember.
But we've got to have accurate I mean, it really kind of defeats the whole purpose. I know that there are projections, but I hope the projections are as accurately as we, possibly can make them. Now, to me, it does get a little bit different. I mean, if we're on 6+6, if we're making these projections on only 6 months of actuals when we're in month 10, I could see where that could be a problem. But I mean, that's why I hope this new budgeting system and our ability to keep track of it, that we could be at a 9+3 at this point, because it is really hard to compare and take a look at things when you don't have actual numbers or pretty close to actual numbers of what you're going to spend this year to look at what we're spending next year. But I just go back, we've operated the library at 3.1, 3 million, 3 million, and now we're going up to 3.5. I know some of that is going to come back in the revenue reimbursement, but again, I'm just trying to see where we were saving the money, because it looks like it's pretty much continued to cost us pretty much the same to operate the library for 3 consecutive years.
Yeah, and this is one thing. This is kind of a good time for me just to say this. Of course, I've been here, like I said, 4 or 5 days now. I mean, I've already seen a few things that I know I will be able to help next year. I'm too late now to really have influenced this process now here, and so. But I do commend staff. We've had 4 city managers in the last 12 months. Been a lot of change here, and so I do know that a year from now I will have, of course, been here about a year, and so. But I know with my experience, my ability in budgets and so forth, I will be able to provide some different direction and processes here that I've seen here. Again, staff are doing a great job as best they can, but I know I will bring something else to the table here that I know will help the process here. So I'm taking all your input in, and I'm going to find a way to mesh it all together. So I wish I could say it's going to help you this year, but there's only so much I can do this year here. So, but we're going to work together to influence this process really well. So, but I know, be patient with myself and my team, and we'll come back even better even next year. So, is that fair? Yeah.
One other just reminder on this is that there is a almost $50,000 ask for additional overtime to cover police officer overtime at the libraries. And so that's built in on that 41,620 account. That's what that increase is there.
And this is also, too, one thing with my math degree, I love budgets. That's just what I do. And so as city manager, I get to see things at a higher level than most ACMs and DCMs get to. So I hope the next year I'll be even more helpful in this process. I will bring knowledge that I know staff may not all have, and so I'll help catch little tidbits that individual departments may not be aware of. And so, I'm very impressed with the work and knowledge that staff has, but I know they've also been without this position here to help bring that extra piece to that. So that's one thing I look to bring to the game next year, my knowledge that I'll know the system to help answer some of fill some of these holes in. So.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Okay, Ms. Storrs, let's try to keep you on.
Okay, the request yesterday was instead of looking at an 8.5% increase on the residential fees for solid waste, what would that look like from a commercial side? And so we've got some numbers here that we can hand out to you all, but that would be just under a 22% increase on the commercial side, and that would be to fund the polycart program that was discussed yesterday. So it would be 0 increase to residential in this scenario, and it would be a 21.7% increase on the commercial side. And they've got a breakdown here kind of on the different combinations that are available related to commercial services for solid waste.
Do we know what the private market is? Where does that put us?
It's very difficult to get those numbers from them.
That's what we were told last year, but I think my comment was, do you not own a phone?
Is what?
Was, do you not own a phone? I mean, we can call them and ask them, right, for a bid?
We can, and we have.
But where are we where would that put us, I guess is what I'm saying. If we had this increase, where does that put us in the market?
I don't know currently because we haven't talked to them recently. And generally, when we call, even Republic wouldn't share their commercial rates with what they're charging. So is that what you're asking?
Yeah, but I guess if you call from the city phone, I bet they won't tell you.
Well,
but I bet if
probably not, but I can't call from a different one.
You can't call from your cell phone and ask them? I mean, I don't mean that bad. I mean,
well, they all have my cell phone. They know who I am. So, I mean, we have great relationships with them. That's the other thing. It's just it's a private market, and they're competitive against each other.
Sure.
I don't know that they're competing against us, but they're competitive against each other, and they don't
we
advertise those rates.
What I would say is we need to price ourselves because we don't want to push everybody away.
Yeah, I think right? I can answer it this way. We know that we're probably the lowest by far because of some of the conversations we've had with some of our larger customers who have said, we thought about going away, but we looked at the other rates and we said, no, we'll stay with you.
So would this increase affect that, you think? I mean, are we still, you said we're way lower, so does a 20%, does that get us
I think
close? Or?
Here's what I'll say. Let me try again. I can make a couple of phone calls and see if we can find out from our customers maybe what they have.
Use my phone if you want. They don't have my number.
Well, I think the best route maybe to go talk to some of our other customers who have explored that. That's maybe
Okay.
the best way to find that out. So,
But I think that'll help us make this determination of, do we put all this on the commercial side?
Yeah.
Can it bear it? Because we don't want to push it away, right? That's counterproductive. Make sense?
It does. It does. And it's really difficult sometimes because we're in a competitive market with the private sector and the commercial side. And
Right.
that's a lot more challenging than it is on the residential side where we're the only ones
Yeah.
at play. So it's really just trying to recover our costs for what our business
Yeah,
does.
for sure.
It's a little bit different.
What
And
is
we shouldn't
the,
be really competing against them, in my opinion, anyway, or to try to outprice them or underprice them or all that. That's not what it's about. We're trying to cover our costs there, too, and it lands where it lands.
That's all I'm getting at,
Yeah.
is we don't want to do that, right? We're about private business. We want
Right.
private business to succeed.
Exactly.
But at the same time, we can't have an increase that puts us out of the market. That doesn't make sense.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that we're jockeying to undercut them or anything. That's not the issue.
Yep.
But we do have to remain competitive. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and I'm not saying we go all the way up that, to where we are competing with them, but does that make sense? I mean, we
Does.
just know, can we do this? And they're still getting a great deal. if
We'll
they
find
use
out
us.
some of that information, and we do see a fluctuation in commercial a lot, and they'll come back and forth, or we have a new customer that comes in, and then they drop off after 6 months. But some of our larger accounts,
Yeah.
they stay with us for a long time.
Okay.
And again, I think part of the goal, I think originally was that given this was a residential
Yeah.
service, we were looking at applying the rate to the residential side. And so that's how I think we originally proposed this, is apply to those who are using the service. And but we can definitely look at. I know from my experience in Paris, we just transitioned to private trash there, and they would not work with us on giving rates. But we did find information through customers. The company wouldn't give us information, but the customers would give us information. And so that's one way we can try to backdoor the information if we can get that.
so in order to revenue the additional 1.7 million that's needed, it's a 21% increase to just the commercial side. That's what we've got here. And what was the increase to revenue, the 1.7 on the residential side?
It was an 8.5% increase.
Okay. And then what was the average? Is the average monthly $24 a month?
Not to say only,
Trying to remember if it went from 22 to 24 or whatever it went to. No, it's monthly.
it was average, current fee is for a one-family residence is $22.90, and this would go, an 8.5 would take it up to $24.84, which is a $1.94 increase per month on the residential.
So on the residential side, 8.5% council. On the commercial side, 21%. But then, maybe you're 35, 40% below the commercial rates out there, right? So
I don't know if it's that much.
you don't think it's that much? Here's probably where my private side kicks in. I don't like that my tax dollars or my fees, whatever, go to government, and then government comes and competes with me unfairly in a private sector business that I may run. So if my government is raising their rates in order to make it more fair for me, I typically look at that differently than you guys utilizing the landfill, saying, "Oh, well, we don't have to pay landfill fees, so we'll cut your rates and we'll lower our commercial side down, 20%." So we're actually doing what we should be doing in servicing, I guess, our customers, but also staying within market of what private business does, is one way to look at it. I know you could look at it differently, because if you pull those two sectors apart, you may have some gross revenues over your gross costs. So I think if we're unwilling to look at the overall and say, well, we're probably already charging enough between the two that we shouldn't be charging anymore. If what we're saying is we're not charging enough between the two, we need to charge more, then I feel like moving the commercial side up actually probably gets us more in line with our competitors that are having to compete against their own government, their own taxes, so to speak. So I don't think that it is going the wrong direction of capitalism and private business to look at raising that commercial rate up, unless we were willing to say, we're then revenuing more, but you've got to look at the two together, right? So if we're trying to offset residential revenues by getting those up in order to afford the poly carts, we're either factoring the commercial and residential all together, and we're looking at a $5 million excess per year, or we're able to look at, well, our increase could come more on the side that they may not be justified by using this, but it is one department. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the only thing that you possibly could get is, because your commercial contracts, they're going to know that you raise the rate to benefit the residential side. So that's you may get that complaint that what added benefit did I get out of this? My rate went up, but the benefit went to the residential side. That's one thing you could get, since it is public information that they know what we're looking at doing here. So that's just one thing I know from my experience, that people, they do look at, okay, when my price goes up, what's the return on investment I got out of the price going up? Right. If my service stayed the same, I didn't get anything better, where did the money go? Well, it went to the residential side to keep their rate down. That's just the only argument you may get.
Same phone call I take across the board, though, of, he didn't get a new trash can and I raised the rate, and he doesn't need a poly cart. He's got one in the back. So I think we're forced into the entire fishbowl together of your billing the department as a whole. Yep. Yes, sir.
Just refresh me again, Donnie, on what we're getting if that increase were to go into effect. The poly carts and what else?
This is also for the equipment to service those poly carts. This is for trucks and personnel.
Was that equipment accounted for in the potential lease program that we were looking at? As far as if,
No.
Okay. Would that affect the increase any if those pieces of equipment were accounted for in the lease thing?
If we could lease them instead of purchase them?
Yeah, I don't know how that would look with
Sure.
Percentage.
Yeah, and just so y'all know, too, I've already received an email back, and they said we can lease you anything. So just have to work on the numbers. Takes a lot more time. But to answer that question, those were not in that replacement list that we have because they're not in our fleet. Everything that was on that list is currently in our fleet for replacement. We have a separate list that would be for additions to the fleet.
So at some point, this could be wrapped into the replacement program. And
Yes.
So, but the replacement program we proposed earlier is to replace existing inventory, where this is adding 4 more to the inventory that will eventually be added to that replacement list.
Yes, if we purchased those, we would put them into our fleet. We would start a rental rate on those that would start generating the money for the replacement of that equipment at its specific time.
How long do we think will this program take to get rolled out?
Well, that's the other piece. Our trucks are looking like that they're going to be about 9 to 12 months, I believe, for production before we could get those trucks in. We only have one more route to add to it. It's the growth pieces that are the most critical to me, that we're prepared for those when those subdivisions finish building out. There's a lot of activity in the trails right now. There's a lot of activity that's about to start. I can't remember the name of the subdivision that we just did the annexation agreement on as well. So there's just a lot of things coming that we're trying to prepare ahead for. But to get that one truck in that time frame is going to be sufficient for what we need to do.
And so this one rate increase then funds this program perpetually?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But will we necessarily need all of this money next year? I mean, will it take longer? I guess the trucks are not coming until, so we can't do the poly carts.
It depends on when those windows open. Usually you see those windows open in the fall, early in the fall. So you're always adding another year to that order before. So you're looking at a couple of years if you wait till next fall to order. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So we're just trying to prepare ahead so that we have everything in place for that. You can, but you're pushing yourself out a couple of years, not 1 year when you do that.
Well, if you go the route of doing the business rate, if we do see a churn in business of significance that indicates, wait a minute, our rate is too high, or we're losing a lot more business, it doesn't justify it. I mean, it's not like we can still move forward with this project, but maybe we have to come back either with another commercial rate increase if it doesn't fund it. But I think given the fact that we don't necessarily need all this money next year, although it could be generating it, gives us some room to see if the commercial rate would take the hit without losing a significant amount of business.
Yeah, I think it would be important to just discuss for a second, if you'd allow me to, in our planning process, my philosophy is that we really, in order to be good stewards of the money, I'm trying to think of how to word this properly, but we try to really plan ahead to where nothing catches us by surprise. And there have been some things in the past few years that have caught us by surprise, even back to the drainage conversations of preparing, having things on the shelf and ready to go. So that model is what we're operating under now, and that's why we have the 3 trucks. That's why we're planning this out, so that we don't have a bunch of new subdivisions come online. If the building market starts taking off again, we're ready for it, and we don't have to wait and have people putting trash. It's difficult to have that conversation with them when you get a brand new subdivision that has really nice homes in it and say, well, you got to bag your trash and stick it on the curb. So just trying to be good stewards of that in the time frame. That's why we designed it the way we did.
Could I jump in real quick? Landfill increase. We were revenuing more than what we had seen in the past, and so what was that total net, and could that go towards this so that we didn't have the full increase on the ratepayer?
I don't have that in front of me, and
was it $300,000 or $400,000 that we?
A tipping fee increase. The landfill just generally doesn't generate very much money.
Oh no, I'm saying the landfill was revenuing more.
Oh, I got you.
We had seen the additional revenue on the landfill and what it was grossing.
Yeah, I remember what you're talking about now. The thing with that is that we can't rely on that every year. We saw an increase this year because of some of the wildfires and some of the other things where we saw.
Is the polycart a one-time fee, or is this an annual reoccurring?
Polycart? No,
yeah.
that's.
I'm just working on the $1.7 million in my head.
Okay, got you.
So that polycart $1.7 million ask, just a one-time ask, right?
No.
So it'd be a 1.7 this year, 1.7 next year, continuing to add for growth component.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't catch that on the front end. I thought we had a 1.7 total that we were doing to get these new neighborhoods, and then it would depend on growth from there.
Yeah, a piece of that component was definitely for growth, but yeah, that's recurring, that rate increase.
For replacements and whatnot? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. All right.
We also have to build in our internal lease rates into that as well, and plan for new equipment, things
Okay.
like that as we grow. And new polycarts, we have to replace those.
Okay. Anybody else got anything? We may have to come back on this one.
Donnie, what do you think? I mean, I think we failed to ask that question. I mean, I know our position, but I mean, what do you think? We need money. What do you see
do.
the best way to, what's your opinion?
I agree with what Mr. Path said. When we propose these rate increases, I think, and it's all what we've all been taught in our careers, that they need to go to fund exactly what they're funding, and that would be in the residential side. That's what this rate is for. So that's why it was produced that way. I do understand the argument of, well, if we are at a lower rate, then we probably need to bring it up to market. What is that rate supposed to be? I'm not so sure about that. But I personally would prefer it to be in the residential rate because that's what it's funding as a residential program. It's easier for us to keep things clean that way.
Okay, I guess it's an option too, and thank you for that. I guess it's an option too to do a blend. We could do some and some.
And I would be more comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we did last year with the dumpster replacement program. Even though I wasn't here, I think we shared, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we shared residential and commercial rate to cover the extra dumpster program, replacement program.
Because I hear you saying that, if it's residential, then residential needs to pay for it. I mean, I hear you in saying that. So, okay, thank you.
To me, that's just the most transparent way to put it out there, that's exactly what it's for. So.
Okay, thank you.
Are you good to set that one aside for a minute and go through the rest of them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Can do that. Oh, sorry. Okay, so the next one on my list is in discussions, and again, I apologize because I know we're kind of bouncing around a little bit. In our discussions yesterday, I think related to some of the street funding, the question had come up about reimbursement resolutions and how far back those can go. They can only go back 60 days prior to the approval of the resolution. Yeah. No, you can for design. like for A&E type things, but for actual like construction costs, you can only go back 60 days. So, and I verified that with the bond counsel. You're welcome. Another item that I have is I worked with our Parks and Rec department to come up with ideas for what they are recommending for the remaining bond proceeds. And so I thought it might just be easier just to pass this around. They have a list here. I know Michael Kashuba talked about several things yesterday. That he went back and met with his team, and this is what they were looking at. At the top, he's showing, we had about 1.1 million left in that Thompson Park pool bond issuance. And then potentially if there was some working budget that they could tap into as well. And he had 500 here, so if that changes, we could certainly get with him. But this is what he's thinking. They're recommending doing a project there at the zoo, I think in that middle area, which might even help potentially a public-private partnership if we kind of invest some money. Yeah, exactly. And I know that was one thing that I had a council member bring up is have we looked into any public-private partnerships? And, honestly, we actually had talked, I think at one point with the group, what is the group's name that's out on the loop? Nature Shelter, what is it called? Anyways, I can't remember now. Anyways, one of those groups, we had talked with them a little bit about it at one point, but I think maybe just kind of the age of some of our facilities and some different things, it just never panned out. But there may be other people in the community or other groups in the community that might want to brainstorm some sort of a partnership with us, and we would love that. I think we are definitely open to that. So if you all have ideas, we are open. But putting an investment into that zoo to kind of really get some of that main area going a little better, I think that could be very important. Hazel Rig Park lighting. I think this may be one of the parks that y'all hear a few comments from time to time. We got some awning work done, I think, recently out there. It is certainly in need of new lighting, and that could also help from a public safety standpoint. Same with Bones Hook Park lighting. As you know, that's a heavily used park as well, especially certain times of year. There's a lot of big community events going on, but having good, proper lighting in there would be very beneficial for many reasons. Then again, Michael had mentioned that, keeping those two older pools up, we're going to have to look at replastering. And so he's kind of got a disclaimer on here that we've got to look at some structural integrity first, but thinking as long as nothing unexpected comes up, maybe about $300,000 to get those two pools, that'd be Southwest and Southeast pool, replastered. And then $75,000 for a partnership with Alex O'Brien Tennis Foundation for is it called Padel Court? It's not paddle, it's Padel Courts. Thank you. And so that could be a really interesting thing to add into that tennis center area and bring some additional interest into that facility with some partnership dollars, which is always great. And then continuing to address fencing out there at the John Stiff area, kind of fencing for the soccer area, which is there on the south. I don't know if y'all have ever gone by when they're doing soccer, but there are 1 million people out there. And so they run a lot of soccer facilities out there. Actually, I think this is where we've got some of the Kids Inc. groups playing right now until their facilities are open. So getting some good fencing out there helps in a lot of ways with soccer. And then kind of an option on the other one. So there are some assets we're needing to pull out of those school parks. So some removal of some of those or some additional concrete projects. I don't know that we can ever put enough money into those sidewalk repairs and concrete repairs across our neighborhood parks. So, and then, so that kind of would be that amount, that 1.6 up above, and then they have their annual $1.5 million, and they're working currently with their parks board on that, and so they'll be having recommendations come through, and they'll be bringing those projects kind of individually to you all from the recommendation of that parks board. So thoughts or questions on any of this?
There's some good ones.
Okay, great.
I definitely think we would consider it. Sorry, go ahead.
I agree with the spending. The only thing I would question is, like the soccer field fencing.
Okay,
I think we need a little bit more. I'd like to know where Kids Inc. is on their project.
Okay,
What the
okay.
projection time is. Because I would rather, if they're going to be using their own facility, we could actually use that 300,000 or whatever it was somewhere else.
And I don't know that Kids Inc. is the only group that uses that. That is just kind of where we had kind of relocated, but we can get you some updates on that. Yeah, you bet. Other thoughts or questions on these? Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm running a list and I'm adding. So, Ms. Storrs, you have anything else that you wanted to propose, or are you good to go into some of our suggestions?
No, I'm good. I'm open for y'all's suggestions, and I'm hearing that we may have actually some grant money. I guess it's grant money on that could help out with this Hazel Rig Park lighting and maybe the Bones Hook Park lighting, and so that may be something that we might want to prioritize that either for something else or potentially for another park. We have parks all over the community that need lighting. That is certainly something I don't know that we can put enough money into.
So we know there's grant funding available for this?
It's the Energy Efficiency Block Grant Program that we're still going through the process. It was allocated, so we have a set amount, and these were the two parks that we're looking at. So it was a little different planning departments running that grant, so it's coordination with parks.
Has it been awarded?
No, it hasn't been awarded. We've submitted in this next grant cycle, but it's one of those kind of automatic awards. We are allocated the funding. We just have to prove up the project.
So maybe we could reallocate that funding to Thompson Park. I know that
Yes.
Thompson's too big.
Yes.
But if we reallocated this could do a third or close to a
Yes.
half of it, because I think that's a huge need and public
Yes.
safety issue as well.
Well, and to your point too, if council decides they wanted to put, because I know at one point it was mentioned, put some more towards parks, anything we could, we could put that towards, if y'all would prefer maybe not to do the John Stiff fencing, you tag all those together, we're not to a full lighting project, because Thompson Park is huge, but we could start making some dents in that.
Sure.
Okay.
But Mayor, Laura does have more things on her list of past parks. I think that's what you were asking a minute ago. She does have more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
More things to bring back to you here. So.
I misunderstood. Thank you.
I think we're ready to go past the parks.
Okay. All right. So, okay. I'm just.
That's all the bond funding, right? All the bond funding.
Yes, but it was the 1.1 million is bonds, and then we were just kind of showing some options if council wanted to do a little bit out of the working budget too. Okay. All right. So the next item is there was a question about how much is really spent, I guess, from an operating standpoint on water and sewer. Because I know we had talked a lot about there's depreciation, there is debt service that we're paying, there's payment in lieu of franchise fee, property tax, those type things. And so the net amount, once you back out your depreciation and then your any type of an admin fee, debt service payment, you're at about $54 million. So to put that in reference, if you go back to, I'll tell you the page here real quick. On page 19 on your water and sewer utility, on the right there, you'll see we've got about 72 million as your operating expense less depreciation. So that number has the depreciation out of it as well. So you're looking at 54 million. So of that is for maybe day in, day out operational type items. So that means that about a quarter is going towards other things, and 3/4 is going towards more day in, day out operations.
I think that's great. I'm not really trying to drill into, like you would think, like operations. Are we overspending on PVC? Do we have too many guys, on one project? Not going that direction at all.
Okay.
I am going towards a financial policy direction. So I haven't had time to read what it says.
Okay.
But on the reserves, curious, do you calculate the reserve on the gross on water sewer?
The gross.
Gross revenues.
No.
So what do you calculate the reserve on?
We calculate it on the operating expenses, so 3 months of the operating expenses. So
which one, though, the 74 or the 54?
hang on, let me pull that up real quick, because I do think we have to include some debt service reserves in there. Well, the debt service reserves are down below. So, yeah, it would be on the operating. I think it's on the 72, but Mayor, let me double check real quick.
Because, Council, what I'm steering towards is let's say, and we're learning a great deal. I know this is a larger number than what it is, but let's say we're pulling $20 million from water and sewer to help facilitate general fund and overhead and admin and whatever else, payment in lieu of taxes, all that stuff. If I'm calculating the reserves on top of that, then I'm over-reserving to what the true intent of that reserve is. The reserve is I need to be able to run that department for 3 months if it didn't collect $1. And so if I calculated the reserves on 72 million, but I actually run it on 52, 54, plus with growth components, and I need these positions that are unfunded, then I'm really calculating a reserve on a budget request, not even on a hard cost. So the reserves, 3 months reserves, really would be held back more in the line of thinking of like, worst case scenario, everything goes to hell in a handbasket. Like, I got to provide services here for the next 2 or 3 months, and maybe I'm not collecting monies. So if our customer service level was uninterrupted in that kind of a catastrophic event, that wouldn't be expected by our customers anyway. You would expect potential interruption if something went that wrong. But in the way in which we're going to assume that there would be no interruption in service, are we at least calculating apples for apples?
So it is calculated on that 72 million.
What would it be in the reserve if you calculated it on the 54? Is it 54? Is that the correct number?
Yes, approximately.
Okay.
So keep in mind, if you are looking at that, that means that if something were to happen, we would not be planning on providing that funding source over to your general fund. So that's going to cut off another
correct
revenue source in your general fund.
I think that's great because, once again, we would be on the reserve side of the general fund. Now we're dipping into that $58 million on the reserve so you wouldn't expect to have a departmental failure, right? You would have an organizational failure in society. So it wouldn't just affect water and sewer, it would affect the entire organization. So we'd be pulling from reserves cumulatively, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So I would think then we're not revenuing income over there anyway, because that payment in lieu of property tax and all that other stuff's assuming that we're revenuing. So I don't feel like I'm taking anything away.
So the 3 month reserve off of the 54 is 13.5.
What's the current?
18 and 3.
And then you've got the requirement for 1 year of estimated capital, which is
right.
10 million. So that comes to 28 together. So in this scenario, it would be at 23 instead of 28.
So I'm only asking council to consider a policy change. If the policy is written, does it speak to this? That it would be calculated on gross revenues, not net revenues? Oh, I'm sorry, gross costs, not net costs.
On page 2. So it says for proprietary funds, the target reserve balance would be 3 months of operating budget plus at least 1 year's capital.
Right. So I guess 3 months of operating budget would then need to be defined as hard costs. So if we're depreciating this entity $5 million, are we calculating on the depreciation?
No.
So we pulled the depreciation out. This is just catching franchise fees, payment in lieu of property taxes and else. Yes, sir.
No, yes. If that's we can definitely amend this to write that like based off of like revive or however you want to word it. I guess basically One way to look at it, too, is you could go off of, because even the revised estimate is not an actual hard number, because, again, there's partial guess, partial we know so far today. So we could go last year where we actually have an actual number. It may give you a smaller number, and so which there's risk in that. But that's the direction the council like to go. If you want to base it off an actual last known hard number, the only known hard number we have is September 30th, 2023. It'd be the only hard number we have at that point. We could do that if you like to do that. So, but again, as your chief advisor, there's always risk whenever you lower the reserve, but that's definitely within your policy.
I would want your advisement on how did you do it elsewhere? Did you calculate reserves with these types of fees built in, or was that not part of your model?
I'd be lying to you if I could quote it to you word for word. I think we had a 4-month reserve in Paris off of budget, I believe.
Okay.
I'd be lying to you if I knew exactly for sure. So, okay. But we had about 4 months there.
And then not necessarily saying to reduce the reserves to that level. I'm saying there might be some intelligence in reducing it some. I saw you go for your microphone there.
Well, I have a question for Laura. I think that impacts this and something to think about in looking at future debt issuances for water utilities. Should we check with bond counsel? Maybe you know the answer. You probably do know the answer. Would lowering those impact our bond rating and future? That's a consideration I think we have to understand fully before we change that policy.
Yes, and I've talked with bond counsel, or not bond counsel, it's actually our financial advisors on this, and they said, yes, as you start lowering down that reserve policy, it can have that impact on your credit rating, which means we would just have a higher interest cost.
But what we could do is we could have a conversation with them to find out, is it 3 months off of operating budget, 3 months off of last year's actual? We can find out from them to find out what is their comfort zone, at what point do they feel that we are going to suffer, start seeing our is it AA, I guess, right now, or
Triple A.
Utility, AAA.
We're AA on the
Oh, that's right.
Water sewer, yeah. We can ask them at what point, which direction, whether it's hard actual or budget, do we see our AA dropping? We can find that out.
What also would be interesting to pull back would be, go back 50 years. How many times have we taken out of reserves?
Oh,
So what I would try to assess there is our risk. So if I'm justifying this risk based on we've got to have a plan if this happens, I would just want to see and to what extent? I mean, did we take $1 million out of a $50 million reserve account, or did we take $50 million out?
Yeah. What I can say, sorry, not cut you off there. What I can say from experience is when you cash flow, there are times when you do dip into your reserve technically, because cash flow, money doesn't always come when expenses come. But as for I don't know historically, because I wasn't here, but whether we've actually had an emergency where we've dipped into the reserve. I don't know. Right. Floyd, you may know. You've been here longer.
Well,
so.
I don't know if it came from reserves or excess cash. The $2 million for Hollywood Road, when we had that.
Yeah, that came from reserve.
That came from reserve.
But my best advice would be to talk to bond counsel and see what they recommend for. At what point do we see ourselves getting worse, more interest rates, which means more cost to the ratepayers if we dip it down this far? But we can find that information out for y'all.
I think that would be good, and to get something with some criteria would be very helpful. Not to ask the question in the way of what could you have an issue with, anything could be an issue, right? So I would want, this would be the criteria that we would look at this and this. Now, to confuse it a little bit more, I'm going to overlay these enterprises to your general fund. And then my general fund now is carrying a $58 million reserve. Is any of that $58 million calculated that would be recalculated if I change this policy? Meaning, is there part of those revenues that are, not revenues, part of those expenditures that we would then be basing it on, they're already calculated in other funds? There wouldn't be, right?
No.
So the $58 million on the general fund would be a calculation that should show that is, there's no depreciation, there's no payment in lieu of property tax, there's no transfer from that would ever be affected if we made a policy change.
So, and just for your awareness, or we have gone with looking back at prior year revised estimate numbers, knowing that we normally underspend our budget each year to calculate that target 3-month reserve. Now, there's some risk in that, especially years that you have large growth, in your expenditures for whatever reason that might be. But we do that in order to try to squeeze that reserve number down as low as we can. So.
I'm thinking just out loud
in your
in my
general fund,
head.
sorry.
Yeah, in my general fund sits IT.
No.
Right? Rich gets paid out of general fund.
Well, yes, in the city manager's office, but the IT department is in a different fund.
Okay, so that's a small example of looking at a hard cost that may be getting compensated elsewhere.
So Rich isn't paid through the IT fees. So Rich is part of city manager's office, and actually
Right.
his costs get allocated down to the departments that he oversees through our indirect cost plan. And if any of those are funded by grants or outside funding sources, we charge them an admin fee, and part of that helps recoup his
Right.
cost.
So I'm asking the question backwards.
Oh, okay.
And it's because there's a lot of layers. And so to get to that, are there any justifiable expenses that are being compensated in any of those other funds that are covered with their own reserve that are then being accrued and accounted for under the general fund? Because that then, if I made a policy change, that then would change the factor, the number that you'd calculate from for the 3-month reserve.
I think, make sure I'm understanding, is the thought being that if the general fund is assisting another fund, is that what you're talking about, whether we have to continue to assist that fund during the 3 months? Say everything goes taken in a handbasket.
Right.
And the general fund is needed to assist that fund. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, sir. So thank you. I know I'm not getting there, but I'm trying to differentiate a risk analysis. So like if we have an IT department that has its own reserve, what's the likelihood of us ever needing that reserve if we have the same reserve calculation or some of the oversight, some of the main fees being paid for out of, say, an admin fee that comes from the general fund? Then what I'm doing is if I change the policy, I would force those to be calculated separately. Yeah. And then I could be affecting other reserves, and I'm trying to assess whether I would or not.
Yes, forgive me if I'm not understanding, but I think the idea is are all the funds reserves being calculated separately currently, or are they being calculated as a bundle, and to where if you impact one, you impact the other one, kind of a thing? So
yeah, interdepartmental transfers are probably where I would go to and like seeing if that would ever hit a calculation, because if we're transferring from one department to the next and I'm calculating on a, let's say, gross revenue, not a net, gross expenditure, not on a net. Like in water and sewer, for example, you're pulling a lot of things out that, may be transferred in some of these general fund type instances.
Yeah.
So the main thing that your other funds, your water and sewer definitely is the bulk of it, but your other funds each pay an admin fee into the general fund for their portion of the overhead costs, their portion of financial costs, payroll costs, purchasing, all that. That's calculated as an expense that is included in their reserve calculation.
Right. So am I counting expenses twice in the way I'm calculating my reserves? So if I'm paying for services from water and sewer, well, I'm hard costing those expenditures and I'm putting a reserve on it. Yeah. Then over in general fund, I'm also calculating those expenditures because they're billables, but I still expense them. And then I'm calculating the reserve on that.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is are we showing the general fund, are we basing our reserve off of numbers that are also being counted for in the water and sewer fund? Because water and sewer, that's one way of looking at it. It starts there, money gets moved to the general fund, so we base a 3-month reserve in order to keep operating, then we can see the big total of general fund, and are we double counting that number?
Right.
So
because what my goal is here is to get to a $25 million amount that I've got that without any risk in taking on additional risk because I tried to spend down a reserve, or I'm just saying I just did a better math problem, and now I've freed up money for poly carts and for different services and all of that stuff without changing the risk analysis. Because if I come to you and I say, hey, Laura, I want to change this policy because I want to take on more risk. Now, that may be our right to do that, but that might not be very smart. But if what I can say is the way that this policy is written wouldn't actually affect our risk, it's just the way in which you're running the math, then 100% I'm way more comfortable affecting that policy.
And I think we can absolutely look at that. To me, it almost sounds like we would write it something, the policy somewhat of operating expenses less any kind of admin fee or additional support to another fund or something like that to be excluded from the reserve calculation. And I think that could absolutely be a reasonable policy to put in place. I just also want to remind council that for instance, we were talking about, let's just use the example of water and sewer utility. So right now they're at a $28 million reserve. Running the calculation this other way, I think we had said it might be a $23 million reserve. So that $5 million, that's one-time funding. It's not recurring funding. So just making sure, council, okay, perfect. Just making sure we're all on the same page.
No, and I think that is that's really good because I think we are definitely attacking this animal from both sides. The one-time funding that is, look, here we've got all the parks projects and everything else. You've got Transformation Park. We probably have 50% of our problems are actually one-time fund solutions. That we would see perpetual, return on that for years before you'd have to do anything else. The other 50% of our problem, is stuff you've got to find in your reoccurring revenues. But the way in which we're calculating these put us at a disadvantage if those monies just don't exist. Now we're making decisions blindly, and we're like, well, no parks this year because we're going to go all on pay increases, right? So what I'm going for is more money in the community without increasing risk to the organization.
So if there's other thoughts, I thought one of my follow-up items for you all actually kind of goes hand in hand with this conversation. The question was, can we charge airport a payment in lieu of property tax and also the interest? And so we were able to find some information. Actually, I know Andrew just stepped out, but Andrew had located this for us. And there is a specific statutory requirements for the use of airport revenue. And so this is stating in Section 112 of the FAA Authorization Act of 1994, Congress expressly prohibited the diversion of airport revenues through direct payments or indirect payments other than payments reflecting the value of services and facilities provided to the airport, use of airport revenues for general economic development, marketing, and promotional activities unrelated to airports or airport systems. They also prohibit payments in lieu of taxes or other assessments that exceed the value of services provided. And they also prohibit payments to compensate non-sponsoring governmental bodies for lost tax revenues exceeding stated tax revenues. Anyways, so from our quick research on this, it is looking like, and I know the FAA is very restrictive on what those dollars can be used for, and so it is looking like there's most likely not the ability for us to do a payment in lieu of property tax or even take the interest earnings from airport. So you've got more options on your utilities, but it looks like there's a lot more restrictions on your airport dollars going through that fund.
Could we possibly use airport funds to help pay for our fire upgrade academy out there? I mean, it's on the property. It's directly related to the airport.
Potentially, yes, since I think one of the biggest hurdles we'd have to overcome, to your point, is does it help the airport? And so if we could get over that hurdle, we'd have to research it further, but we can certainly look into that. I mean, it seems reasonable because it is out there at the airport. So we can research in on that as well.
Yeah. Anything else, Council? So we were anticipating maybe $1 million on that airport in lieu of property tax. You're saying not allowable.
I had not calculated a number for the airport, a payment in lieu of property tax.
Okay.
I had done one on drainage, and that may be what you were
Maybe that's where I wrote it
Yeah.
down.
It was, hang on the drainage side, the payment in lieu of property tax was $213,000, and the payment in lieu of franchise fee for drainage was $588,000. So that might be your number together.
Drainage came to 1.3 total.
Let's see here. Oh, plus interest maybe? Yeah, that's
yeah.
your interest. Yep.
1.3. So everything on drainage 1.3.
Yes.
You good with that?
So we would have to, we could rework their budget, and we could bring down their annual cash funded capital. As we mentioned, that would hold for a few years because they are building into that that full debt service payment on the current issuance. But in a couple of years, what that might look like is as we go back down to their normal 2 to 4 million of cash funded capital, we may have to take this 1.3 from that unless we decide to adjust.
So is it fair, could we set a drainage fee in lieu of tax at $700K and leave that one alone? That'd be consistent, you could work for, or however you calculate it.
At 700?
Yeah, I think that's where that number came from.
So together, the franchise fee and the property taxes, it's right at 802,000 together, but you're saying maybe drop that down?
Yeah, I was trying to do the drainage fee or the payment in lieu of tax at 7 and the franchise fee at 500.
Oh, so the payment in lieu of property tax would have to be based on the values times the property tax rate.
So
yeah,
that's
we'd
a
have
guesstimate.
Yeah,
What do you guess that one at?
213,000.
Oh, I had my numbers wrong. Okay, so 200.
213, yes.
Okay, and then what do you estimate that franchise fee at?
About 588,000. If we implement essentially the same as what we're doing for water and sewer right now.
Okay. And staff's comfort with assessing those based on our 5-year outlook?
I think that we could we could work towards absorbing that over the next few years. We'll be fine for at least 2 to 3 years. It may start getting a little tight in year like 4 or 5. So, but I think we can make it work. We would be restricting the cash funded capital potentially in those future years. Yeah.
How long until all of the bonding debt rolls over?
So
20 what? Was it 29 on drainage?
No.
It wasn't, was it?
No.
It's a little further out.
Yeah, and we haven't issued all of that debt yet.
Oh, I was
So it'll
saying what was previously issued.
Oh, okay.
Because you would have had to have debt funded that, the project over on the north side of town. What was that, Mirror, what do we call the lake? Mirror Street.
Martin Road.
Martin Road, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lived here my
Yeah.
whole life, can't remember it.
Okay. Yeah, I can pull that information up on what you're saying when that debt.
I was just curious if we got
Matures.
5 years worth of, debt to go and spend. We're going to get all of this stuff implemented. Do we have year 7, 8, 9 some additional debt that's already incurred in that rate that
So-
would come back on?
We had issued debt. We had started, I believe, in 2012. So if we had done 20-year debt, it might be. Oh, I've got it right here. Hang on, I'm almost there. Drainage. Your first debt issuance is going to roll off in 2032. And then you've got one in 2034, one in 2040, one in 2041, and one in 2042.
So we may be setting a council up with a good 5-year look, and then they may have, 3,
tight
4
years.
years to where they've got to get a few things budgeted before they would be back in having available debt with no rate increase.
That's
Otherwise, future council just has a rate increase to maintain what we're doing.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I would ask if council has any apprehension in that. Otherwise, I think we could direct on this one. Questions? Okay. So we're moving 1.2 million is what I'm trying to do.
You're trying to get 1.2, perfect. Okay, and knowing that part of that will come from interest, if interest rates change, that might get squeezed a little bit in future years. But, I wouldn't anticipate when interest, well, who knows? Who knows at this point? So, okay, all right, I appreciate that direction on that. So another piece of information that you all had asked when AECC was here, the question was, what is that revenue source coming in from BSA? We do some dispatch services for them, and the way that contract is structured is they pay us an annual amount, and it increases each year by whatever CPI is. So, and then it goes through. I think it was going through this year, and then it automatically renews. And so once it automatically renews, it continues to just grow each year by a CPI amount. And so what we're receiving monthly right now is about $8,800. It's $105,000 a year is what BSA is paying us, and that's for dispatch services. So that's what that revenue was that was coming into AECC that we were looking at yesterday. Any questions on that? Do what? For dispatching them?
Yeah.
I don't know, honestly. I could see what I could find out.
I'd like to.
You want to
see
know?
the
Okay.
number of calls we're taking or whatever,
Okay.
dispatching, or
All right.
just to see where we're at.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us see if we can run some numbers on that. I bet they have, I'm sure they have call numbers, and we could back into costs of some sort. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Then another question that had been asked, or I'm sorry, Mayor, did you have more? Okay. Yeah, side conversation. I'm getting very close to the kind of some of the follow-up stuff, and then I know we were going to talk even more big picture things as well. One item that you all had asked about was our outside legal services. Remember that professional services line item? It was about at $773. Brian and I had talked, and we had kind of discussed what was currently going outside, and we are both comfortable with bringing that down completely. However, we need to continue to put an amount in there for the outside counsel that we're working with right now. We just got that first invoice in, and what I would recommend, and I don't know what that's going to look like, but at that rate, we'd probably need to put about $250,000 in that professional account, so it would drop it from that $773 down to $250. So that would be what our recommendation is, and that would go back into y'all's recurring budget amount. So,
yeah, I think so. I think he's pretty heavy on the front end. I know I dropped 10 items on him right off the bat. I know Kraft dropped several. So I think that'll average and become way less. Could be half, but the 250 is a good budget amount. I think we'd like to see that there. Plus, then the existing legal department is still held at $1.7 million, right?
Yes.
So we're not affecting that department, even though we have vacancies.
No, exactly. And I think hopefully we'll be able to start filling up some of those positions, and so we could, that preserves our ability to go ahead and get our internal staff and to give some flexibility. I mean, because we don't know what'll come up in a year. I mean, there might be a big project that y'all need your outside counsel to work on, and that 250 might give a little bit of flexibility on that. Oh, so it's almost $500,000. It is $523,000. Yep. All right.
And so
That's yes, sir.
what's kind of a breakdown of how we came up to that amount?
For the $250,000?
Yes.
So we had gotten
Because I think our agreement with our council is, is
100.
100.
Right.
So what's the other 150?
So let me interpret this real quick because I had my hands in this one. So
Yeah.
the 100,000 was an amount that he said he wanted approved in order to get us to budget, which he projected through September 30th. Now, he projected that 100,000 quarterly, more or less, based on everything that I was telling him over the phone when I reached out to him. So I think he actually was thinking more like $400,000 a year. And then now we've looked back at a pretty heavy month that he was working with us for several things. And Sanctuary City was very heavy in all the back and forth and the emails and the time. And so the total bill was 20, I think, for that month. So she's running that times 12 to come to 250 roughly.
Okay.
And
And then Mick McCamey, how much does he usually run a year, based on how much we use him?
Yes. Oh, no, okay, we had gotten, like, kind of the details of his contract. I think Brian was good. He can speak to that maybe a little bit.
I don't know exactly what the number is, but I can get you that number, so.
Okay. Yeah, we will work on getting that then.
on my numbers, I wasn't pulling it down 550. I was pulling it down a little less. So, like, if we're projecting 250 on council's council, then do we need to get a number and leave that in? Or are we fine on the overall legal department with plenty there?
I have to ask Brian, are you going to need any funds for outside counsel for anything? I know that's the question because you don't know, I know you can't predict lawsuits.
Exactly. It's sort of like what George Hyde said this morning. I wish that we could tell you definitely, but we can't. Lawyers can't do that. So, but hope, if you don't have a big case come along, then that is a pretty good estimate. With the understanding that one big case, one big claim can change everything. And so that number has always been kind of an estimate in my mind based upon what do you have pending going on and what do you see coming down the road. And so in that conversation I've had with Laura, I think that's a good number.
Yeah, it really is a guesswork. I mean, it is a guesswork side. It's reckoning 250 at this point.
And the other thing is with Mick, what we do is, Mick's helping out kind of because we don't have all of our positions staffed as well. And so our savings on those positions is essentially offsetting what we're utilizing Mick's services for. So, and I'm just pulling it up right now in this last year. And I don't know if Mick was working on necessarily any special projects for us or anything like that, but it was his total fees came to right at $96,000 for a full last fiscal year. Yeah, that's what we paid.
And there is, obviously, if we have a deputy city attorney position vacant, we have another assistant city attorney vacant, so we have budgeted to fill those, but obviously if we don't, there's money saved there that could go towards offsetting any overage you have on the professional services there. So it's kind of, if you budget high in one, then you may come in under because you went high on the other service, because we hire outside counsel because we don't have staff. When we hire staff, we don't need outside counsel. It's a seesaw effect.
So just real quick, I know you may have a few more items.
You're good.
How many more items do you have?
Well, I'm actually to a point that I was wanting to kind of start talking big picture and maybe start walking you all through some salary scenarios and some of that kind of stuff.
So before we do that, let me talk really big picture.
Okay.
September 30th, correct?
Yes.
That's our final day.
Yes.
And you like to have this done on September 19th?
We have it planned for right now on the 17th, but
17th.
You have to do 2 readings of your ordinances on your tax rate and your budget. And so we had done the first meeting in September and then that special meeting on the 17th. But if y'all would like, we could do the first reading on the 17th and then the second reading on the last meeting in September too. And that would build in a whole
Still get it
another
done.
week. Yeah.
Okay.
We could do that too.
What I'm trying to assess is a little bit of time. So we have a lot of really good things here. We still need quite a bit more information probably to actually start to plug and play a few things.
Okay.
I would love to think that if we just stayed here late, we work till 7 and just get it all figured out and have everybody know exactly where they're going. I don't think we're going to get there. So like it's 3:15. I'm thinking we need a recess. Come back in here. We drug Miss Casey back over here again. I think it's the 13th or 14th time she's had to come over. So could we just listen to her first, let her present like, hey, if there are monies, which I think we're looking for, here's what I could do for you in public health. that might align with y'all's strategic goals and planning. We don't spend too much time there. Casey didn't tell me, but I'm sure it's 10 or 15 minutes, and then we can move on. But then I would reserve maybe an hour at that point still to get you guys out of here by 5. Does anybody have a conflict if we stayed till 5? I mean, I do, but I just texted it. So everybody else good? James is not good till 5, but okay. So let's plan on that, and then we would like some scenarios because it looks like you may have already run a few numbers, and you could play with some of those $10,000 amounts and what they look like.
Absolutely, and
Great.
would love to brainstorm even more ideas. If you like some, don't like some, so we could run more scenarios before we meet with y'all next time, if needed. So.
Do you think you would need a special meeting to meet again just on budget, or do you think we could get to the point to where a regular scheduled meeting, we could utilize a budget session at that point to finalize a few things?
Are your, I don't know your history here. Do you do budget meetings during budget council meetings, or?
So we have essentially 3 different meetings. We do the first one where we talk about the voter approval tax rate, and then we have them vote on the not to exceed rate, which we normally recommend be the voter approval tax rate. And then we come back, because then we have to start doing the notices in the newspaper and online. And then we do 2 meetings for readings of the ordinances in the public hearings.
But those are all done in council meetings, it sounds
Yes,
like. Yeah,
yes.
I'm thinking you're probably going to need another special meeting at some point, probably mid to late August, I think. I give you council a chance. This has been the point of this week has been a nice tour. You've been given a guided tour of the budget. Here we walked through a ton of numbers. We've seen a lot of faces through here. And so now you have to take it home. You've had some comment ahead of time. Now you can take it home with that comment in your mind and walk through. I know in my prior communities, councils hated just getting budgets and then just being given 2 weeks without any feedback because it's just so much there. And so now we've had a good tour. Now you can walk through for a couple of weeks. We get back probably mid-late August and really hammer out a few final details. So probably, but it may be a special meeting because I don't think we can get this done at a council meeting.
Okay.
Mayor, have you met this council?
Yeah. I know I run some of the shortest meetings in the history of Amarillo. So, let's take a 10-minute, and let's come back in here around 3:30, and let's see how much we can get done, and we'll start with you. Thank you.
And yes, so yesterday, I didn't know if this was one-time funding, recurring funding, so I prepared a menu of options for us. One option is one-time funding, one option is recurring funding within the $500,000 budget, and one option exceeds the $500,000 option. I've been a daughter for a long time, so I've been asking for things for many years. So one-time funding is always very helpful to us. Recurring funding supports public health infrastructure and truly moves us forward to more of a preparedness state. So I can talk through each of those options. Okay, so one-time funding, the things that we talked about that would be really helpful to our department would be a preparedness mobile clinic. So I was at a conference not long ago, and they had we have our large mobile clinic, and it's big and it is very, very nice. This option is a smaller version of that, so more like a van-sized option. It's about $200,000. The really nice thing about that is that we can provide clinical services out of that option, but it has different, and I'm going to sound, I'm a nurse, so please forgive me, but clickable spaces in the floor so that you can change the configuration in that van to utilize it for different needs. So it could be used for clinical services, it could be used for mobile command, it could be used for a meeting space in the field. There's lots of different options that mobile clinic or mobile unit could be used for, because we can change the configuration here locally. The other thing that is really needed is a walkway between our two facilities. We don't have that currently, and it would be really useful for us. The third thing that we talked about that could be really useful for us, and especially through preparedness lens, is in that space either between our two buildings or to the north of our building, is to build another facility that has a conference and training room and parking for our current mobile unit and this new mobile unit, if that is something that we want to talk about. So those are some of the things that we talked about with some more one-time funding. I know we had talked about medication and different things like that. The difficulty with purchasing medication, and Councilman Kraft really, I think, highlighted that just a few minutes ago, is those things expire. He presented us with an expired AED pad, and so very helpful, and a very helpful
Thank you for the compliment. I was just walking by.
absolutely. Always appreciate people
The fact that he's
awareness.
smiling at the meeting's a big deal. So.
Absolutely. So, so I think having those connections and having dollars that are available to us to purchase things when it's needed, which was available during COVID, is really helpful to us. Having a cache of medications is probably. It brings some challenges. We can certainly do that if we need to. So those are some options that we thought about with one-time funding. Recurring funding, we really wanted to highlight that infrastructure through public health. And so with recurring funding with $500,000 each year, we talked about some of the positions in public health that we really do need, including a communications specialist, another chronic disease prevention health promotion position. We are working with Medicaid right now to become a provider so that we can bill Medicaid, and so we put in this budget 2 billing staff so that once we're able to bill Medicaid, we can move into Medicare and then third-party insurance so that we can expand our footprint there, and that's another revenue source that we would have. We've also heard from our community the need for Medicaid navigators, so we put 2 positions, Medicaid navigator positions in this budget. And that would help patients who need to access Medicaid be able to run that gauntlet in an easier way. It is not an easy task to be able to apply successfully to Medicaid, either for children or pregnant women, adults with special needs. It's very difficult. And so the state offers what they call the Community Partner Program. And so if you're at the third tier of the Community Partner Program, you actually have access into the Medicaid system and can help patients apply, and you can see where they are in that process. So we've heard from our community that that would be really helpful to have. And then an additional receptionist at our 1,000 Martin Road facility. We've also got some general office supplies, patient education that would certainly go along with that communication specialist. You mentioned an informed consent campaign, health promotions, those types of things. The technology needed to support these positions, computer scanners, that type of technology, and then our maternal child health and injury prevention supplies such as car seats and cribs when the grants. We do have grants that support these purchases, but we identify gaps. So sometimes the state doesn't have car seats and whatnot.
How often do you run out? So any example would
Sure.
be a good example of, well, I've got to put you on a waiting list for a baby carrier, a car seat, or do we do anything with women's health in the way of like prenatal, postnatal vitamins, care, things like that?
So we do. So our car seat and crib program, I think since November of 22, they've given out over 500 car seats and just over 300 pack and plays. And we are on 2 state programs to provide car seats. And then as we have additional funding, we're able to purchase car seats. And the same for pack and plays, the little portable cribs. But we do have gaps in that funding, and we do have wait lists. And those are we probably have wait lists, I would say, every 3 months or so, 2 to 3 months. And so then as soon as we get a resupply, then we serve those families that are on our wait list. And then
What does the big list look like?
So the big list.
What's your total cost on the big list?
On this big
Yeah.
one? So,
Annually reoccurring.
this reoccurring, this is $500,000 on the infrastructure piece.
Okay.
And then my giant legacy leaving is a women's health clinic.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got that at $1.1 million. And that would be to offer prenatal care, women's health services,
Yeah.
those types of things.
What would not get covered in that? Like, do you feel like, because I mean, we have local, we have nonprofit, we have, just different doctors that give of their time, but then it still seems like we're still so desperate to actually get, transportation, where they just can't get to the sonogram, and so we're incurring costs medically when we're delivering babies that require way more medical care and treatment on the front end because there were missed doctor's appointments because they didn't have transportation. So, like, could you facilitate the transit coins, or is there something you could facilitate in, like, well, we can come get you, we can take you, we can drop you off, but the clinic does this kind of internally? Do you envision anything like that?
It's definitely something that we are talking through and working through. It's a challenge in our community. And Cindy and her team definitely work through those things and are brainstorming all the time. Our transit team does a great job. Time is always a challenge. Medicaid offers a ride service but they will only pick up like one parent and the child that has the appointment. And so it's often very difficult for, if mom has 3 other kids at home, Medicaid won't transport those other children to the appointment. So there's just some real logistical and interesting challenges that unless you're, faced with those, we might not even know about them. And so, yes, and we'll certainly continue to look down that path. There's no women's health clinic on the east side of town.
Yeah, so just getting prenatal vitamins.
Yes, I'm sorry, there is Joe
there?
White Clinic.
Okay.
I apologize.
But other than that one, but just if you were to facilitate, well, no, we have those and we can give you so many days to come get them. And then if you absolutely have no way to come get them, would we have a vehicle that we could do a delivery from?
Yes, and we do, and Cindy's team does have the availability to do prenatal vitamins.
And some of that could be grant funded, but what would it look like to you if council was willing to take a risk on, okay, go build this model, go show us everything you can do, the impact for the community, and really fill these gaps. But then we're going to fund this as a pilot, and we're going to know, just like we've been hiring nurses that are, well, I shouldn't say nurses. You may have had some, but I know library had, was it English as a second language? What was the ones that were going to expire from the ARPA monies?
Digital literacy.
Digital literacy, sorry, different literacy. They would expire. So what if we did something where we knew, okay, this isn't one-time funding, but this is the commitment that we could make, and then we'd go out and look for grant funding. Does grant funding come in and shore that up? And then if you had 50-50 match, then it'd make it way easier on a council in the future to never cut that program if things got leaned up.
So there is some grant funding through the state, the Texas Healthy Women's Program. In talking to other health departments, the reimbursement isn't robust. And so there are some challenges with that grant program. The way one health director phrased it is it's a lot of work with not a lot of payoff. But we can certainly continue to look for those opportunities, and I'm sure there are more. And are you thinking just prenatal vitamins or prenatal care, or what kind of services?
I am keyed in on the women's care and the women's clinic side, especially with pregnancy and some of the stuff that we see on prenatal, postnatal, or is it postpartum?
Yes.
So, and then when you get, outside of that, the next tier, I think, is all good. I think you can get way too far off, and now you're into specifics.
Sure.
But in general, I think that would be something. There's a couple things that are just real. One, it's something that's been a part of so many different topics because we're all in the sanctuary city debate. Right. And so, if you really look at some of the decisions that are made around that issue, it comes down to who's truly trying to help these women. And so some of that, I think, is supposed to be funded federally, and the criticism is we just don't get the money out there. We don't get the resource delivered. And I don't know that that's true. I have a harder time believing that. I feel like the resources probably aren't there as much, and that there's so much red tape and there's so many things that your hands are tied. And if we had something that council could invest in where, okay, I couldn't get you qualified for this, but you know what, I'm going to go ahead and give you this today to get you by, or I'm going to go ahead and help you here. This will at least get you a car seat or at least get you whatever. And then maybe we get, that 2-month, 3-month delay, waiting list cut down. So we just get better at helping our community.
And I think kind of a combination of these, and I didn't put them all on one, but I think definitely having the Medicaid navigators, the billers, I think those would be really important. I've built the women's health clinic, but also some of the elements from this infrastructure budget as well are really important, because we're going to need, I think having navigators to get patients and to help them access Medicaid and other services
Yeah.
so that they can access care is super critical. And then, and in this women's health clinic budget, we've built it around having a clinic like at public health where we could have a nurse practitioner, an RN, an ultrasound tech, like really doing things well to serve patients.
Yeah. I think you could really grow it, and I think that if you did well, Normandy Group is a group we have that's supposed to be out there really hitting the pavement for us, looking for grants. And so if we did something like this, I just think that would be one that we could equip that company with, and they could go and really look. You could continue to look, but I almost feel like with this council, we would probably give you, like, hey, here's a year to get it going. Here's another year of commitment for us, and then you need to have 50%, funding in order to continue the program. So if we went into it with the issue of, I don't know that we want to build something in an entire department. If we put a future council in a position of like, the only way you're ever going to move back on this budget is to say, I don't care about women. And nobody is ever going to be at that place. So, I just think we would want to give ourselves the ability to say, look, we've got to have it sustaining or self-sustaining.
Okay.
I like the idea, though. So, council, what do y'all think?
We can do the Heimlich as well, sir. So.
We have plenty of medical attention. So Tom, in his love for women and his calling to help those that are in need, has been choked up in this. And I think with that, we would love to have, $1 million. That's probably where you're at. 1.1 million, is that what you said?
1,400,000.
1,400,000? Let's see what $1 million could do.
Okay.
And let's see how far you could stretch that, and then bring something back, understanding that it may be a pilot program.
Okay.
With the intention of going and looking for those grants. Would love to see something that had some part of transportation or at least delivery in it, because I think that's a big issue. And then I do like some of the abilities of maybe we could even get, some doctors that were willing to come over there to see patients that can't travel, or, so the equipment's there and it's an easy volunteer position for them where, 4 hours a week I give this much time to do whatever. Prenatal, postnatal care, vitamins, supplements, everything that goes along with those poor outcomes that we keep delivering down at these hospitals. And if you can target some of those super negative data criteria that we have, those metrics around town, and if you can show the need, which is easy, then your improvement on that would be something that you could show year after year, and then it's something where we've got to keep investing in this program.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you guys for being here. You got one?
Yeah, just one question, maybe more towards for Laura, but on the hospital district, is there anything that prevents, allocating, say that public health needed $1 million from them allocating $1 million to them, if their board approved it?
So you're asking if there's anything on the hospital district side that would conflict with the city allocating money to the public health?
Say that public health needed more funding, farther beyond the $1 million that we were supporting them with, are they legally allowed to?
Yes, they are under funding constraints, though, and so I don't think that they would have the ability to fund them any higher than $2 million at this point. So once they got a property tax rate in place, absolutely, that could be something, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And we would probably work with public health on that to make sure that they are funded at a good rate. So that could look like, it's still a little ways off, maybe the 2030 range, but it'll be here before you know it. Yeah. That's a good question.
Okay, we're going to keep on trucking. Thank you for coming
very
back
much. We appreciate it.
every time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, Laura, did you need to jump on anything else before I kind of go one at a time through council? I feel like I missed something. I skipped something you were going to come back to.
we have priced
You have
out
some
some
numbers?
information related to police and fire. If you want us to go over it now, or we can
I think
wait.
that's great. Let's take the biggest bite out of this elephant, and let's look at what this looks like with pay increases.
Okay, so we're handing out, Andrew got this from Chief Birkenfeld. This is the information that was requested related to their people leaving over the last couple of years. Just so you know how to read this, the items highlighted in that light blue were actually officers or a higher rank. The ones that are not highlighted in blue were recruits. And so it's tracked on there, reason for leaving, and then some additional information for you all. And it looks like it's the last couple of years. Okay.
Other than, I mean, is there anything, is there any trend or anything we can deduce from this? I mean, is there something going on, or is this just a list to show us where they're coming from?
Yes, it's just a list to give you some ideas of why folks were leaving. A lot of them, I mean, it's kind of all over the place. Many are not continuing to law enforcement. Quite a few have gone to Pantex. Some just aren't making it through the academy, which just shows how tight we are on quality applicants that are going to make it through the academies.
Okay.
Okay, so next, wanted to first off maybe recall to everyone's mind on the request that came through Meet and Confer from police and fire. Those requests came in for total salary increases of $13.1 million. What that looked like was about a 15% raise in the upcoming year for police across the board, and then it was a staggering rate, or a varying rate, I should say, amongst the fire positions, with I think the entry level being about 38% increase, and then it kind of tapered off above that. The highest increase was certainly on the entry level position, and they were trying to tie to the local markets, or I say that Texas cities that were somewhat similar in size, and their average pay. So that price tag came in at $13.1 million. So the question was asked previously if APD and AFD over 100,000 gets 5% and under 100,000 gets 10%. And this is just APD and AFD. That comes in about $6.3 million. Then to do a 10% for the lowest on APD, staggering down as you go up the steps, that would come in at a price tag of $5.2 million. And then we had the question that came up the other day about what would it look like if we tried to get police raised up to that $70,000 mark. And so that was coming in at just about a $9,700 increase to get that entry-level pay for APD up to $70,000. So we applied that across the board, APD and AFD. What that would do is that would be essentially I think it was a 15% raise for entry-level for APD. AFD, that would get them up to the low 60s, and that was about a 19% increase for them. And that comes in at a price tag of right over $8 million.
Now, that was 9,700, and then it stepped down all the way to 5,000. That's 9,700 for everybody.
Everybody.
What's that total again?
$8 million, just a little over $8 million.
Okay, so everything just moved up $9,700 on
Correct.
both.
I think that was kind of to combat the compression concern.
Right.
Yes.
That's APD, correct.
APD and
That's
AFD.
both.
Tell me the total one more time.
8 million?
Was it 8 point what?
Well, it's $8,012,000.
So 8 million.
It's about 8 million.
So 8 million does everything there, but then it's a reduction in percentage. So if I'm the chief, maybe it's a 3%.
That's correct.
Yeah, it's almost like having a de-escalating percentage going up because 9,700 means less to a person making 120 than it does to a person making 60. And does this number include like benefits and so forth? So the 8,012,000 is calculating pay, benefits, retirement.
Does that include other public safety, or is that just, okay,
Police and fire. And
So-
it doesn't include the chiefs, assistant chiefs and down.
does not include them? Okay.
Just, so Chief May and Chief Bergenfeld, they usually run through our civilian process.
Oh, okay.
What would put that starting pay for AFD?
AFD, it would get them just a little over $60,000. I can get you the dollar amount if you'll give me just.
70 for APD.
Yes, it would be $60,508 for starting pay for a firefighter. And that's 19% over, yes, what they are currently. And that would get them to $70,036 for a starting police officer. And that one was, I believe, it was right about 15%.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I know we threw around a lot of scenarios, and you guys are bringing things back. I don't want to read into that as anything that was communicated as a need on that. I was identifying 70,000, I think, is a good attraction to get up out of the 60s for our police department that has the greatest need. Now, we're transposing that over to AFD, but not needed in the way, I'm not saying it's not wanted, but then fully staffed, totally different scenario. So would want council to consider, our other stakeholders around and what we should be doing on fire that's different than PD. Let them stand alone. But that's good that it's 8 million. So 8 million. Okay.
$8 million.
What else did you run? Any other scenarios?
So I think that gets everything for police and fire. We did run a scenario. I had a recommendation, or not a recommendation, I'm sorry, an idea from a council member. What about doing 4% for civilians, where 2% was a COLA and 2% was truly based on performance, and allowing the directors, the supervisors, to pay people based on how well they're performing. So some might just get 2%, and some might get more than that 4%.
Are you saying all civilian positions in the organization?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
all civilian, excluding police and sworn police and fire.
So you would have badged in the PD only, or you would pick up those civilian positions in that 8 million in the PD?
No, the civilians, so anyone not subject to 143.
Okay.
Does that
Yes.
help? Yeah.
Yeah.
Organization-wide.
Organization, well, yes.
So,
The 8,012,000 is for sworn officers
Yes.
and civil service, fire, and
but
police.
would catch fire marshal and would catch city marshal in the TCOL. That 8 million would catch that?
We included the fire marshal. We did not include the city marshal, but, I mean, we could include.
6
any-
positions, I think,
Yeah,
so.
we could include.
Yeah,
anyone
so
who
fire
wanted.
marshal's in the 143 category, so that's the 8 million, but city marshal would be with the
We
civilians.
could include those if you so wish.
Absolutely. And if you wanted to do AECC differently or other. Yeah, airport PD, any of those, we could. But for now, it's, the way these numbers are, have been run, it's just sworn police and fire positions.
What's the 2 and 2 total?
The 2 and 2 for civilians, and this is just general fund, it comes in at about $2.4 million.
Okay. So you're 2.4 and 8, so you're 10.5 roughly.
Yes.
By the time you add in maybe some city marshal and stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
If we adjusted a few around.
And that still leaves, you have all your grant funding positions that would be 2 and 2. They're gonna work all that out. Water and sewer, enterprise, airport, they're in their budget if you apply the 2 and 2.
Yes, sir.
What is the total if you look organizational wide? Just curious.
Just a second.
The 10.5 is really the important number
So
for us budgetarily.
all other funds we're estimating are about 1.4 million.
Okay, so like definitely well within their grasp when you split that out. Okay, so council, that's really good. Anybody feel like 2 and 2 is a stretch? What was the total? 2.5
Yes, sir.
for the rest of the organization?
It was 2.4 for the general fund,
0.4,
and then
yeah.
outside the general fund civilians would be 1.4.
Okay.
Well, and to be clear, because we talked about this, is that 2% going, careful with my words here, but based on an evaluation. So there may be some, the 2% COLA, then the other 2% would just be like a pool of money type deal. So that the directors or whomever, when they do an evaluation, somebody may get a 5% raise and somebody may get a no raise other than COLA. And for me, I felt like that helps us retain better employees. It fosters people to work hard, show up early, stay late. I mean, they get to, instead of just doing it across the board, everybody gets 4%. I think that's creates mediocrity. So.
And I'll say I do appreciate the fact that we budget for everyone to a minimum have a 2%, because that at least gets supervisors out of the position of, what if everyone is doing a good job and I don't have enough money to give them all raises? Because I know that's one way of losing employees is having to. I'm only going to give you enough to give 2 employees a raise. You got 6. Good luck. And you got 6 who are working out really well, and that puts the supervisor in a tough spot.
So let's clarify the 2 and 2. To confirm, Don said that the 2 is a set COLA. The other 2 goes to the director and isn't a pool of money and could result in higher than 2% raises given or lower than 2%.
Within the constraints of how much they have to work with.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Council, does anybody have any pushback on kind of the merit side of that?
I like it. I did that when I was running the company, and I got better employees and kept better employees. I mean, it put a job on your manager, but that manager's job is to, hey, I'm sorry you didn't get a raise this time. You need to pick up the pace, you know.
Okay, I like it. Les, where are you at? Okay, I'm all in. I like that. I think with what we're identifying in the budget, I don't know that a 2 and a 1, you know, or something like that to really hold that down. I guess I would be curious as to, so the carve out was our police and fire chief are going to be on this?
Again, the 2 and 2.
Yeah.
Okay. What other positions would be on the 2 and 2 that would come out of PD or AFD?
All their civilians.
Civilian personnel, administrative staff.
Right. Okay. Sorry, I was just thinking like, was there an assistant chief? Everything from there down, it's all with either what we decide, $9,700 or whatever. Okay.
Because assistant chief is kept by 143, aren't they? Okay, so we're not going by that. So assistant chief is under that 9,700. Okay.
And again, that's just how these numbers are run right now. If y'all would like us to look at some other scenarios, you know, if you have certain other positions you want included one way or the other, we can certainly take that back. We can take feedback from this and we can go run numbers on that as well.
Who else has before we get into ideas on, well, we could do this, we could do that, who else on this particular item has anything else that you might want to propose in the way of pay increase?
And this is still keeping certification pay and all of those things.
Yes. And that's just keeping them at a level funding as they are right now. That's correct.
And do you have any breakout of how it looks, you know, after year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, before they, like, for police and fire, as far as their step raises would go?
Yes. Yeah, we do. It's, we can get you some handouts on that if you want. I've got some numbers here, but I don't have copies of it, but we can
That's
get that
fine.
for
I mean,
you.
you have police and fire?
Yes, I do. Are you, so let's
just curious what it'd be after a police officer gets out of the recruit academy.
Okay, so police officer, I think they start.
Oh, never mind, it's up there.
Oh,
It's on the screen.
thank you, Stephanie.
This is with the.
This is the we're discussing putting that through meet and confer, and I think they were gonna make this cadet, and then that, they step into that, I think. Oh, there's here in here. So this is, hang on, and I may have the wrong one flipped, hang on
They
just a
don't
second.
show that
50
up there.
and 60, okay.
So there you are now.
There it is.
So
That's the 9,700.
that number one line would be the cadet, and number two would be sworn officer as soon as they get sworn.
We're working through that on meet and confer right now, actually.
Oh,
But
okay.
I think that's kind of the direction we're heading with that. Yeah. And if y'all would like, we can print y'all copies. Would that be helpful for y'all to take these with you or anything? Are you good? Okay.
I'm good.
Okay.
What was,
You don't have enough paper, I know, but,
There's your fire department one right there.
so the cadet, so with fire though, it's 60 during the academy and 60 year one, correct?
Do we have any counsel, especially you, Kraft, where you feel like that 19% jump is too much, and we might not apply that same $9,700 out of APD?
I mean, I don't have any issue with what it is. My main question was, 'cause I know like with police, they're paid differently going through the academy versus fire, correct?
I believe so. Yeah.
I think so, yeah. When we did run the averages so police officer year one, firefighter year one, of the cities that we had the data for, and the average gap was 6,600 between a police officer and a firefighter.
So we would be,
With other cities.
yeah,
Yeah, with other cities.
about 9,000.
So do you guys feel like this very, very large increase on those especially lower tiers when you look at those percentages, still large increase historically in the middle of the pack? Do you feel like this alleviates some of the willingness of councils to break something out over 3 years and to try to build into it? So I guess what I'd be hopeful for is it's hard to feel like you've always got to keep stretching and that every year there's an expectation, and it's tough when you say, hey, let's pass a 15% raise increase and we'll pay that out over whatever we can. Let's say we break that out over 4 years, and by the time you get to year 4, it's like, man, we got to do another 15%, to keep everybody happy over the next 4 years. And so with caution, setting a standard that we would feel like, well, we didn't have a plan to come back here this heavy and this hard next year. So what would you guys recommend, especially some advisement on like how we walk this
Well,
one forward?
part of we're meeting with them on Tuesday, so any feedback we get today is going to help with the negotiations. But we were going to discuss maybe not even putting year 2, year 3 in there, and just having language that we shall meet basically the first week of August based on revenues coming in with the new property taxes, because we're just guessing. If we plug 5% in there, it may not be there next year. So it'd be better if we could negotiate year by year on that, knowing the goal is to see steps moving forward. Just the state law changes have made it almost impossible to guarantee those revenues. So even if we don't, we would be building in language saying, sorry, if the money's not there, we're not paying it. And that's just misleading as well.
I know when I visited with each of them, they were, they just wanted to have an opportunity to talk every year. And I think they would understand if there's not money, and if there is,
This right here is a significant show of good faith. I mean, from my experience, this is a significant show of good faith right here, what you're offering this year.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the only other application of this would be for council to consider. Okay, we know what we can afford. This would be a really large step all at once. So, in order to keep ourselves from stepping too far, we may break that out into a 2-year rollout. So then you get to go and advertise, hey, here's what we're doing for you, but you got to wait 2 years. You got to wait 3 years to get there. The problem that I have with that is we have these needs in that police department now. And this would be a massive impact that would draw something to the now that we need. And the attrition rate just keeps getting worse.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, to Andrew's point there, because of state law limitations on SB2, it would be challenging for us to put in contract promising 5 or 6, because you may not be able to financially do that without cutting everything else. And so it would make a lot of sense to go year by year by year. That way, council can then make the decision every year.
So, council, are y'all good with trying to put this, let's say we actually put it pen to paper, and we formalize everything, we pull in all of the variables, and we have you guys bring this back with the messaging that we would have of, hey, this is, I don't know, would this be more than anyone else has done?
Yes.
Significant.
I'm thinking there was an election done in the 90s that might have been close to this, or maybe a little bit more than this, but no, there's been nothing.
Let's say within the last 3 decades, this may be the most that we've ever seen a council come together and support that public safety apparatus as a whole, and that we will continue to look for money, we will continue to work real hard, but then we're not trying to set an expectation for next year. And we understand that there would be a decrease, but we would still want a decrease from the percentage, but we would still want to continue to build those areas up.
Okay.
You feel like that'd be a good way to message this? This doesn't send the wrong message at all. And, I'm asking if you guys feel like this is in your budget, you comfortable?
I think so. As
yes.
far as the $8 million?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. And I think this is a much better message than what they're planning for on Tuesday.
Well, I think that's great. And then it's a much, much, much better message on the 2.4 million than what maybe has been messaged. Because I know we were very upfront and just saying, look, we're going to focus, and if it's there, we'll try. But if not, then we won't be looking at the rest of the organization.
And you'll remember in the April update, we were projecting 6.2 million to be available for this, so we've exceeded that by a couple million.
Yes. So with that, it sounds like y'all are okay with us maybe discussing that at Meet and Confer on Tuesday.
So let's recap real quick, make sure we give good direction. Council, we are now directing staff to go out and firm up what this 8.1 million actually covers, and that how this blankets across all of our 143 sworn officers. Then we are looking at a model of a 2 and a 2 for the rest of the organization. And we're expecting that to come back somewhere around 10.5 million. We are looking at a current budget right now that we started with 13 million. You've taken $1.5 million out, or was it almost 2 million in different odds and ends? Everything from an intelligence officer, liaison position to, we put streets back in.
I have a list.
You have a
if
list?
you want me to run down it.
Yeah, run the list with us real quick, and let's see if if we start at that 10.5 and add to that, what's that total number look like?
But real quick, I think just make sure I'm clear. From the council, we seem to be clear on the 8.1 for the police, fire, sworn, and then the 2 and 2. I think I'm seeing nods of heads. Okay, good.
I think I'm there if everybody else is. Okay.
Okay.
Your list.
No, you're good. And I just want to say I think this is going to be very appreciated if this is the plan that moves forward, I think, on all ends. Okay, so.
Can I add one thing to that?
Yes, I'm sorry.
So now I don't know if there's anything else council can do to help on attraction and retention. Hopefully our leadership thinks that this is a big help in them on the attraction and retention. But I do, if you look at studies, and not this is more than just your regular raise, but the impact of a raise on an employee is very short-lived. as motivation and retention. Most of the time, it's not the money that's the primary motivator, although in this time we've got to give people a cost of living. So I would challenge us to make sure that our leadership is doing as much as we can. You know, most people just want to know, do I have a career path? They want feedback on how they're doing, all those, you know, basic things to make sure that we're focusing on those other things, because I think we've made the investment here. But I don't think the investment alone is going to get us to where we need to get on the attraction and retention part of it.
No, yeah, you're absolutely correct. The pay raises are short-lived in most employees' minds. They appreciate it for a while, and then next year, what did you do for me this year? And so it really comes down to an environment. It comes down to from council to management to supervisors in the front line is how they're treated. Are they appreciated? Are they humanized on social media and the public? And so it's those kind of things. Do they feel appreciated as people? Not just public employees, but people. And so those are the kind of things that we have to be working on.
Did you run those totals? Do you have your list?
I have a list, yes. I might ask if this would be helpful. Stephanie, would you pull up a blank spreadsheet and we could are y'all good with that? Maybe we just run the numbers on the screen, and so we're all looking at the exact same thing. So I'll give her just a second. And we kind of brainstorm a little bit off of this, just feedback that we'd heard over the last few days. So as we throw some of this out, if y'all are not good with things, we're perfectly fine with that. We're just going to throw out some things that we had heard over the last few days, or maybe we had even discussed, not necessarily gotten direction on, but things we had discussed. And then maybe y'all can decide, do you want to stay on the list or not on the list? So if we started with a $13 million working budget, Stephanie, I hope I'm not putting too much pressure on you to.
You're still keeping your $3 million one-time expenses off to the side.
Yes, and we've got a separate running list on that.
Okay.
So do y'all want to go over ongoing first?
Yeah, I think you do that on
Okay.
Ongoing reoccurring monies.
Okay. So if we start with $13 million, as the working budget, let's back out, let's say $8 million for APD and AFD raises. Let's back out $2.5 million for civilian raises. And I think together we could, because we may want to move some back and forth from there. So hopefully we'll be in good shape there. All right, so let me skip down. Let's put, if you'll do a positive $523,000, this is adding money back from your professional accountant legal. Right? Because we had it at 773, we're going to move it down to 250. So that's 523 that goes back into your working budget. Let's back out 150,000 for the intelligence liaison.
That's with benefits, not base pay.
Yes, in total. Okay, so back out 150. We're good there. Okay, so now let's add in 99,000. And this was, we had some money in the public works professional budget that we don't need. So we're going to back that out and add it into your working budget there. Let's add in another 277,000, and that is the ARPA funding of those library positions. Okay, so that would go back into your working budget.
So that's one time.
A couple of years.
It'll last for about 3 years. And then if we will eliminate those positions if we can't get other outside funding.
So it didn't last for 3 years?
There's funding for those 5 positions over a 3-year period, so it's 277 each year for 3 years.
Each year?
Yes, each year. Yep. Does that make sense?
They're like $13.
Does the council know it's 277 each year?
So in that 277,000 is what we're estimating the cost of those 5 positions would be each year.
So we actually have that times 3.
Yes, in ARPA funding that we're going to bring y'all back some more information on as well. Yes. Okay. So if you'll back out $50,000, and that's the bridge funding. Okay. And then the next one was the July 5th event, and I had it at $125,000 was that right? Because I think y'all had said 100,000 went so well this year, let's see what they can do with 125 at the most, and if they can get partnerships greater than that, it'd be less than that. Does that sound right? Okay. Okay, so 125,000 out for July 5th event. We discussed illegal dumping yesterday at 1.1 million, so we would need to back out 1.1 million based on that kind of revised option that we were looking at, if that's something that y'all are.
I thought we were 800,000 on that one.
So on that page.
Okay, that's okay.
Okay,
Keep going.
we can come back and visit.
Yeah, we'll get a complete list. So
Okay.
illegal dumping program 1.1.
So I just took this one out. If you want to put it in here for discussion purposes, this is subtract out $1 million for public health funding. I mean, I know is that ongoing funding or is that one-time funding? Or
I think you can do that in one-time funding, and you could make a commitment of 2 years to give you an opportunity to find.
Some other.
Yeah,
help.
I'd say grants. But let's pull it off of this one for
Okay,
now. Let's
okay.
put it over on the other side.
Okay, let me do that on mine as well. Okay, so scratch that, Stephanie. Then we had identified, okay, let me go first to this. I'm going to just call it drainage funding of 1.3 million. Let's add that in, and that is payment in lieu of property tax, payment in lieu of franchise fees, and interest income. We were going to
Love it.
target the 1.3. Was it 1.3 or 1.2 you had?
I had 1.3 down. I think you had worked
Okay,
it down to
perfect.
1.2 at one time.
Okay, so y'all are good with 1.3?
Uh-huh.
And then we had talked yesterday about unfilled positions. Now, we may want to revisit that, but for now, Stephanie put 840,000 positive. That's what we had identified in unfilled positions that we could relinquish in the general fund to
Okay.
put back into y'all's working budget. So 840,000 there.
Tom didn't even have that on his list.
Okay, so now I want to talk about some things that we discussed, but would you like me to put the amount on there for, Stephanie, can you get us a running total, please? And leave us some space. Yeah, thank you. Can everybody see that somewhat? Okay. I hope this is working okay
What
for
I'd
y'all.
love to do is get the rest of your ideas, and then I would love to get council to go in and weigh in on anything else that they have on their list that would be reoccurring funding.
Okay,
So at this point, you still have 4.1 million.
yes.
What about the LGC payment?
That's one time. Yeah, that'll be
Oh,
on
it's
our
one
one-time
time.
list.
Okay.
So if y'all would, I mean, and something we had talked about, if we put in the 50% TMRS COLA, okay, it's 1.9 million, Stephanie, if you'll back out 1.9.
Now, was that the extra 20%, or are you taking it all the way to the 70?
No, that's just an extra 20%. So we're at 30 right now, this would take it up to 50.
And that's 1.9 million.
1.9 million, yes, sir.
Okay?
All right. Okay, so this one's a little bit out of the box. Right now, we have a program in place for annual leave buyback for everyone, and that had gone, and I still had it in the budget at $1 million. And so what we were talking about was, what if we backed off that amount by 600,000 and put some more money towards letting police and fire just decide if there's other things out of meet and confer that are important that they want to fund. So that might be incentive pay, it might be FTO pay or something like that. Yes,
What
sir.
I had understood was if we were stretching on the increase, the pay increases, they were willing to lose the 1 million buyback.
And that's a great point,
So
Mayor.
like
we
what
could-
I have on my total calculation was that as a credit, the full 100. But what you're offering is to take a $600 credit and leave 400 in there?
So leave 400, but that would only be for civilians. We could wipe the whole thing out, the program out, if y'all wanted to. But then allowing more, we were saying maybe 500,000 for police and 500,000 for fire, to make decisions on how they wanted to do it, because they both talked about little bit different versions of the annual leave buyback program.
I think that, council's pushing really hard to work all of the monies out into the field. and to take some of these kind of variables off the table.
Okay.
I think if we can capture that 1 million, it would go towards some of the other needs we have in infrastructure.
Okay, so so let me do that then. So Stephanie, can you add $1 million in? And that's for eliminating the annual leave buyback program, okay?
Hey, Laura, again, maybe off, what about the Parks and Rec? Did we allocate one time? Okay.
Yep. Okay, so with that, let me look through my list. I think I'm about to the end of my list. So, and I could go ahead and go over the one-time list, or if council wants to go next. Oh.
What about the prescription?
Okay, so yes, on the prescription, we could. We could estimate lowering the premiums paid to the health plan by that $2 million if y'all would like. Or if we could hold off on making any changes, knowing that we're hopefully going to capture some good savings the rest of this calendar year and then potentially into next calendar year. And if we want to pull back on premiums, we might pull back on premiums in the next year.
For this discussion and having a good working list, I think we list it.
Okay.
We go ahead and set it as a goal, and let's work towards that $2 million.
Okay, so Stephanie, add in $2 million then for pharmacy plan. We'll just call it pharmacy plan.
I got a full list here, so I could go, and then you guys could add the ones that aren't duplicated, or we could start with craft and run down the line.
I have one more.
Oh, you have one more?
I have one more on recurring, and it's for 10 years, but it's the potential lease or loan payment for the offices for community development over at the Guyon Sanders Day Center.
So that's going to run us $350,000.
So it'll be about 400, and I'm guessing about 421,000 based on the additional scope that was put in for IT, landscaping, security. What else? So they met again and they reworked the numbers, and so it brought it from like 2 million up to 2.8 million, I think. So where we were at a 336 annual payment, right, I think is what you were referring to. I think it's going to be, it's just under 3.6 now. So it would be closer to 421,000 annually for 10 years.
Okay.
We also talked about you could probably use some one-time dollars to buy that down and lower your loan payment if you wanted to go that route.
Okay.
So, Stephanie, do a negative 421,000? Yes. 421. Yes, the day center side for our community development offices all to be in there in that same facility.
That's a lease payment coming out of community development. Was supposed to be roughly $30,000 a month, and that houses everybody out of the Sims building down at the new Transformation Park with all resources down there. That also helps take care of maintenance and operations down there, and it puts them in a different place. And then you guys need office space in the Sims.
Yeah, we're pretty maxed out, and we were also going to make sure the language said on the other way, we'll pay this lease payment, but we can prepay it off early.
Right. So and then the building is paid as a lease until we're ready to do something different, and then the building is gifted to the city after 10 years.
Right.
So we would have, what was the building cost, $11 million?
I think it would be about 11. It was a 10, and then now it's increased a little bit.
We're going to have a $10, $11 million asset gifted to the city because we're leasing the property and we're using it. And then this brings us into alignment with our stakeholders in the community that are funding this. Okay, what else you got?
That's all I have on the recurring. I've got the one time, but if you want to keep those separate, maybe go over recurring first, or if you want to take those in conjunction. It's up to you, Mayor.
No, I'd rather run just these first and complete them, and then go to the one time.
Okay, that'd be great.
So, Kraft, what do you have that's not up there already? Revenues? Yes, I would say revenues. I don't know that any of us are going to have any additional expenses that we have, right?
I had one additional expense I just thought of. And then as far as revenues, were we able to do anything with the interest earnings?
That's a great point. I just looked back at my list. This includes interest earnings from drainage, but not from water and sewer. From water and sewer, we were thinking that could be close to $3.5 million.
So you have water and sewer at $3.5 million on interest earnings?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. I didn't have
Do you
quite
want to add that
much.
one in there?
Yes, please.
Okay. So Stephanie, if you'll add in an extra. And again, that's for as long as interest rates stay at the level that they are. Or close to where they are.
But keep
Yes.
in mind, that's forecasting that we are going to continue to have bonds, that we're going to continue to put in new pipe and replacements. So we should be able to have some reoccurring interest that's rolling in.
It's included in this number right here.
Correct.
'Cause- yeah, see, it's,
What else you got, Kraft?
And then one expenditure I wanted to talk about. So the paramedic program, that was all ARPA funded, correct? And that's rolling off.
and we added some of that, well, added the incentive pay in to the current year's budget, but I don't know, I'd have to go look at their budget to see if we added in extra training dollars. Is that what you're referring to, the training aspect of it?
Yeah, because I know ARPA was funding the paramedic classes for them for a while, but I've heard that funding's about to expire.
Yes, and that is correct. They're getting down to the very end of that funding, yes.
So that's the only other thing I had on my list, Mayor.
Okay.
If they could research that and see what that would be, I think that'd be a continued huge benefit to the community for a higher level of medicine.
Okay. Mrs. Laura, you got what you need on that one?
Yes, sir.
Maybe just add as a placeholder without a dollar amount, Stephanie.
Until we
we
know
figure that out.
roughly what they're spending each year, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Don, what do you got on your list?
The one time?
No, reoccurring. Anything?
Yep. that's
All good? Okay, Councilman Sherlin?
I think if you get through yours, I've got everything we need.
Perfect. Will be duplicated. Councilman Simpson, what do you have?
Just, I don't have any pork barrel spending like the mayor, but a couple things I just want to point out, and maybe something, I don't know where Grayson went to, but, we haven't talked a lot today about personnel expenses, which is 61.1% of our general budget. With where we are now, we're up about 6.5% over last year in personnel expenses. For 3 years, we're up 25%. But then when I go and look at employee count, we're actually not up that much. Full-time positions were up 5%, at least in the budget. Part-time positions were actually down 10%. Now, I know we did some raises to catch up during that time, but, when I looked at the adding 17 full-time positions, that's about, and this is rough math, it's about $65,000 to $70,000 a position on average when we look at taking the total, and this is just full-time employees, not part-time employees. So what I wouldn't mind looking at is, instead of, I don't know the number that we had there at 840, but if we just looked at maintaining the number of full-time positions the same,
Okay.
I think that should get us 840. You gave up 840 way too quickly. I mean, I want to, let's stretch ourselves, because when you look at our personnel cost, I mean, we spent 4 or 5 days, and not to say we haven't talked about personnel, but we spent 4 or 5 days looking at 40% of our cost. We haven't spent a whole lot of time looking at the other 60%. And so, and that's where, that is where, your expenses are. And again, we have to have people to do it, but that's also where your savings can be when you're looking at being efficient as possible. So, that would be our, my challenge is, can we get it up over $1 million? When I look at that, I see the potential of 1.1 or 1.2 if we just take the number of employees and keep them flat year over year. Just a ballpark, but I'd like to use that maybe as a goal.
Okay.
The second thing that's just a little bit concerning, and the overtime report kind of bared this out, is we were up 33% in overtime year over year.
Yes, sir.
And almost $3 million compared to not just last year, but the last 2 years. So the overtime report tells us that we spent about $8 million in 21, 22, but we went up to $11 million in overtime last year. Again, I understand when we get to law enforcement and APD and fire department, you've got to cover that 24 hours. But to me, overtime has got to be your most managed expense. And can we look at operating next year $1 million? I mean, can we go instead of having to spend $11 million, can we spend $10 million? How are we going to manage the overtime? Because to me, if it's not managed, it can get away really quickly, and it looks like that's what happened since last year. Because that's up 33%. I don't think we had. Police was up about $1 million. Maybe we've got some more positions, but I don't think we'd have that many more open positions. But I think what happens is when you get complacent or somebody's not managing it, overtime continues to run. I don't know what our policy is on overtime approval, how we're making sure that we're staying on top of that. But a 33% in overtime in 1 year is kind of concerning to me. And you look at the pay increases we're about to give police and fire. I mean, you look at if we're not managing the overtime, that's a budget complicator on that. So those are the only two things I think on the recurring expenses. Can we stay flat on the number of positions? That could give us another several hundred thousand versus what we're looking at right now. And what can we? And I don't know, how do we manage overtime? I mean, when somebody is overtime in their budget, how are we reining that back? Because it seemed to kind of get out of control this year.
So along those lines, I just wanted to bring this up, and maybe I'm stealing another council member's thunder, but I had questions from a few of y'all about overtime as well, and which is what brought this report. We're also seeing if we can develop some overtime reports by position, because one of the questions was, do we have policies on each rank of sworn officer, whether it's police or fire, on how much overtime they can have? For instance, as you go higher up in the ranks, do we have more caps set, like this rank and above, that says, like, once you hit this much overtime, that's essentially what you're approved. Otherwise, it has to be an extenuating circumstance. And we do not have any kind of policies in place at this point in time, but I know I had brainstormed with Andrew a little bit. I don't know if he's talked to either chief at all about it, but that is something that we could potentially look at some policies on. And I don't know if this is probably the first time Grayson's hearing any of this. I don't know if he has any opinions on that, but it's an interesting concept. I don't know if it's a possible. I don't know personally if it's possible, as far as if it's realistic, or if that's something that's common in other communities. I honestly don't know, but we could continue to research that. I think, to your point, Councilmember Simpson, on finding ways to manage the amounts of overtime maybe that we're spending, and that's just two areas. But on the civilian side, it kind of takes care of itself, because as people promote up, they become exempt employees, and so then they no longer are paid for overtime at all. So, but sworn personnel are always paid for their overtime. So,
well, it just looked like pretty much across the board. I mean, there's some departments don't have any overtime, and some, but across the board, those departments that have overtime, we've just kind of seen continued increases for the last several years.
Yes.
What would be an interesting number is go back some years back with different management, for instance, different police chiefs. I think when John Stiff was here, we had very little overtime. Is that, Floyd, were you around then? Oh, you weren't even around? Okay. But I think if we look at different tenures, for instance, like police chiefs, I think we may see a different structure of overtime. I think different management styles lead to overtime. So I think it might be a good place to look anyway.
Yeah.
Going back to my first point, I would like to set a target in that spreadsheet of maybe 1 million, 1.1 million on the unfilled positions or remaining that. If we can't get to that, I would like to know what we've looked or what we would have to cut, that we just say, no, we can only get to 840 because of this.
Okay. And just to clarify, are you saying, because what we're looking at right now is just general fund, so you're saying 1.1 million for general fund of cutback between overtime and positions?
No, I'm just looking at, going back to the general fund, we spent about 1.62 million. We're asking for that 1.52 million in general fund. I'm just saying, can we get more than the 800,000?
I see. Okay. And you wanted that target
Let's
to be closer?
let's shoot a target to really challenge ourselves. And if you can't come back and say, well, these are the positions we can cut,
Okay.
are not filled, that are not on this list. But we really don't want to, but council, take a look at it. I just think on the personnel cost side, since it's our largest area, the more that we can sharpen the pencil, then I think the more that it benefits us, because if we don't look, that's our number one cost. So anywhere we can save money on that, I'd like to see the potential of that.
Okay. So would council be comfortable if Stephanie changed on her spreadsheet where we have eliminate positions of, I think we had 840. What if we change that to 1.1 million and we maybe change it to say managing of unfilled positions and overtime or something like that, and that's the target goal that we're trying to work towards?
I recommend for now we try to just find vacant positions, because that is definitive and that's easy, because overtime is going to take analysis. It's going to take probably management analysis, my getting involvement in order to manage that, because that's a very complicated topic right there. But I think for now, immediate purposes, if we can at least try to find chronic vacant positions, that's immediate for what I think the council is trying to get at, because over time that's going to be more of, can we manage over the next 12 months versus bam, the position's gone. So.
No, I was not thinking of overtime in this amount. I was just trying to, again, you just gave us 840 too quickly. I know how that works, and so we can give you 840. Okay. If it came that easy, let's just stretch ourselves a little bit more
We
to be
can
able to
absolutely
see
do
what
that.
can we do to get 1 to 1 million out of it. Because I think we're just in a position where, if we can, extra $100,000 enables us to get other things done.
Perfect. All right.
Thanks.
Can I add something on the public works side on that, just regarding overtime, because this gets discussed every year. There's certain things that we have that occur, such as snowstorms. We can't predict those. Some years we have a massive amount of overtime when that occurs. We also have, just like we discussed earlier with the fleet, we have overtime a lot because we have down equipment and we have to run late hours. So those are just some of the little things that we can't change or predict what's going to happen.
I like it. We're going to help you on fleet. Go right ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say that, yeah, there's some things we can definitely look at policy when it comes to overtime. But again, as manager, my overall goal has always been provide service. And sometimes service requires overtime. And because at the end of the day, your citizens want the job done. They don't want to hear, well, we hit 40 hours, I had to go home.
Mm-hmm.
So, but at the same time, it can be managed. Is it being managed right? That's just one I just got to dig into and find out.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. One other thing I would add. Sorry. Okay. On the drainage utility, the drainage funding that we talked about, I think I'm totally fine with doing that. I would just like to make sure that on this and streets and water and sewer, as we're looking at all these projects of what we're going to do, is that on all of them, including drainage utility, and I go back to our dumpster replacement program. To me, it's the easy example to give that we put together a game plan to handle the infrastructure needs of those. I want to make sure that I've got a good understanding of what the game plan is to not only handle the infrastructure in these areas, including the drainage utility, what we're doing for this year, but to make sure what are we doing in the following years. And I've got a target date. I know how many years it's going to take us to catch up or to be able to do on the dumpsters. I just want to make sure that okay, what is our plan going forward on how much we need to continue to invest on this year to make sure that we're not saying, oh, wait a minute, we don't need to take this money out of drainage utility because we're going to need to do these other projects when we started looking longer term. And I just want to make sure we're not doing something right now, to me, a little bit similar to water and sewer, that we obligate money in which we're saying, oh boy, I wish we had not obligated that money to do other things with it because now we really need it in water and sewer. And I may be wrong on how that happened or what that assumption is, but I just like to have a real sense that we're making these investments this year if we change drainage utility, that we're not short-sighted in something that we would say longer term we really missed out because we're not investing enough money in drainage utility because we've siphoned it off for something else.
So a thought for that is when we're going through our bond ratings with S&P, they have us do a multi-year cash flow projection. So you guys are seeing like a one-year one. So we have multi-year ones built out for general fund, water and sewer, and drainage. And maybe that would be helpful so you could kind of see where we would trend on those. Because it's very telling. Like if you're headed in a wrong direction, you're going to see it on those multi-year plans. If that's something that might be helpful for council.
What I'm trying to do is, when we do whatever we do this year, and then when the mayor's running for re-election, I want to make sure he can say, here's not only what we're doing this year, but we've got a roadmap, and here's what that roadmap is going to, so that, he's saying, here's what we're doing for you. In case you run for re-election, I'm just looking out for you. But I just want to make sure that we've got a plan to tell the public that we've, not only are we accomplishing this thing this year, but we figured out what the pieces of the puzzle look like in the future.
No, I agree, and I think one thing that we've all identified would be an interest in sinking account that would have been really nice if somebody had started it 30 years ago and they had put $1 million in that interest in sinking account. So one thing that I'm geared towards, and I'm not talking about this right now in the conversation, but we could later. So the review of the calculations on our reserves, that might lead us into a place to where we actually could set up interest in sinking in the way in which those reserves are calculated and build something for the future moving forward without just holding a reserve in there. And I don't know, maybe it's a bad plan, but it's something for a different discussion.
Okay.
So let me hit you with a few highlights. I know I'm pushing close to 5 already. I would like to put the fleet lease or finance option of $2.5 million up there. This is a goal sheet. I think that is a very valid goal. You already got a response back. We can lease you anything you need. So if we shoot for $8-9 million worth of leases, we work that in over the next 5, 6, 7 years.
Subtract it.
Yeah, subtract. Oh, I'm sorry, not subtract.
Yeah, that's correct. Subtract it.
So you're saying
No.
an infusion of $2.5 million more into trying to get it
No,
accomplished?
I'm saying we would gain 2.5 net cash in the reoccurring billing. So if you're, and let me make sure I'm not misunderstanding. We have a capital outlay of $8 million in the budget.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going to finance those $8 million worth of equipment purchases, and we're going to have a debt service of $5.5 million on that, which would net $2.5 million in cash.
So that's only a piece of your fleet, and that's not getting you up to where you need to be. That's just maintaining essentially the problem that you have, because we wouldn't be able to get to the whole fleet if that's the case.
Right. Well, I'm putting it on this list as it does free up $2.5 million worth of reoccurring funds in that budget, because you've plugged those funds in as purchases.
We could build the model that way if you would like. Yes.
Because
We
I
can do
think,
that.
think we were proposing you'd spend about $5 million on a debt service payment, and you'd spend about $2 million on leasing payments. Correct? Somewhere around there?
Yeah, somewhere around that. I
Yeah,
mean,
so it was all going to be used
kind
for
of like a hybrid
payments.
model, I think, is what
So
we were
let-
discussing.
Let's not be too ambitious. Let's say it's 1.5 that we net
Okay.
in
We'll build it that way.
realized cash savings. What were you going to say, Kraft?
If I'm understanding it right, debt service is paying for the lease and the cash, correct?
No, the debt service would only pay for the cash piece, and then we'd have to cash
Still got to
fund.
cash flow the rest.
Yeah,
but
the
but
lease
the
side of
total
it.
is not $8 million. The total is $17 million in that outlay, right?
Yes, but
half of that goes, half of that goes towards operations, so the fuel
Oh,
cost
okay.
and,
Yeah, so even the
maintenance.
realized savings of just efficiencies and repairs,
Sure,
parts
yeah.
and whatever.
Okay.
So give ourselves a goal of 1.5 million.
okay, got it.
That's our fleet. You identified the 13 and the 3. The $1 million from last year is a reoccurring fund because that's built in my tax rate, right?
So it's part of your 13 million.
Oh, okay. There you go. It's already in there. There was one other here I missed. Oh, jail contract, 200K.
Yes, thank you. I missed that in my review back. I went through all my pink sticky notes and I
Yeah.
missed that one. Okay.
No, that's a good
And
one.
that was 200,000.
I
Yes.
forgot it.
Thank you.
The buyback annual leave, you got prescription savings, you got that one, right? I think we may have covered them all. What's that total, 10.2 in working budget?
Yes, sir.
Stephanie,
That pays for our raises?
you can subtract out 500K for paramedic. So that'll bring it down a little bit.
That's the annual amount. Okay.
Just got that from Chief.
500K off for that, and then my other ones are one-time savings, and those are reductions of reserves potentially,
Okay.
and a few others. So, what do you have? You want to start that next list?
Yeah, Stephanie, oh, perfect, thank you. Okay, so we were targeting starting with the 3 million one-time working budget. So the first thing, I'll let Stephanie catch up real quick. The first thing would be backing out $1 million for public health, one-time funding. We have $2.5 million coming out for streets CIP funding to get that back where it was supposed to be. We could do it one of two ways. We could either
Well, if you're
refund
going
those.
to take the 2.5 out, then we need to add the other 1 million back in on the other sheet. Or no, you could add it on this one. Well, no, I'm not sure which one it'd be because you put one. Well, it'd be on the other sheet. You put 1.2 in for lockers.
Oh, I've got that
wasn't
on here too. Yes,
Did you have that built in a one-time fund?
we did. The lockers are a one-time
Okay.
fund, so if we cut it down to 200,000, you could subtract another $1 million, Stephanie, for APD lockers. Oh, here, let me. Okay, the first one was subtract $1 million for public health funding, and then subtract 2.5 million for streets funding, annual street funding. And it's a one-time expense swap.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Everybody's good on that. Okay. And then subtract out $1 million for APD lockers.
So the $1 million for APD lockers would go in. It wouldn't be subtracted. Be an add.
Sorry, adding
But
back.
then
Thank you.
I thought the annual street funding was over on the other side because it was part of their budget that you took out.
It is. And if you would like to do that, we need to know what other projects you'd like to eliminate from that CIP list, and we
So
can do that.
when you pulled it out and you put the lockers in, you didn't put the lockers in under a reoccurring fund.
Nope.
So you-
The street funding will come back the next year automatically. It was
Okay.
going to come back automatically.
All right, well, then we're good. Leave it right here.
Okay, perfect. All right, the other item I had was Park CIP. We were, and this was just an option. We had said, Michael showed us a $500,000 option, but I have also heard something about $1 million option for one-time fund. Was it one-time funding for parks?
Yeah, to 1.6, I think, on that page, if you included it.
That's correct. So 500,000 would come out of the working budget. Does that seem reasonable? Okay. So subtract 500 for parks. Okay. And then I've got add back in $1,345,000. And that is the LGC loan and retail finished out space. Okay. And then my last thing is, if council wants to, we're estimating it would cost about $182,000, so it'd be a minus 182 to do the Potter County land swap that we were talking about to get that space secured over there that's just to the west of, Well, I say that, it's just to the north of where the transit multimodal system is. That's that property. So it would cost us about 100, and it's a swap, but we have to do a little bit of repairs and kind of, they're giving us more buildings than we're giving them, so it's essentially making it break even. So that would be a subtraction of 182,000, if council's interested. So, and please know, these are all very rounded numbers. I hope everybody's good with that. Okay. And that's all I had, Mayor.
And I don't need to put it up there, but I think the only other thing I had would be excess reserves.
Okay.
On some of those non-risk funds that we could move into this, say, 2 to 3 million.
Okay.
And they don't have to all come out of one. I would say we would take down a little in each, and kind of look at which one needs what.
Perfect. So 2 to 3 million. Yes.
Say 2 million and.
You want to say 2 million there? Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll add back in 2 million there. Perfect. We can do that.
Just whenever y'all are done.
Anybody? Go. I think we're done. Kraft, you're up.
Whoops. The only thing I was going to add back in is, because I remember in parks, we had taken away the annual, was it $500,000 in CIP to go fund the mowing contract.
That is correct, yes.
And so what I was curious is if we could take 500 from the ongoing and put that back into parks at CIP, if we have funds available.
Yeah, on the other list.
Yep.
And you could remove
You
it
want to do
from
that and remove it from this one? Sure. Or if
Because
that's what everybody wants.
They originally had, was it 2 million?
Well, they originally had 2.4 million, and then we funded those. It was mowing and maintenance contracts. It was tree trim, whatever it's called, the tree maintenance contract, and then some. I think we've got some irrigation contracts as well. So we heavily contracted out a lot on that as well, and part of it was covered by eliminating employee positions, and then the rest of it came out of that 2.4 million. So they're down to about 1.5.
My only concern is that over time, as they just keep contracting things out, I'm afraid they're just going to keep dipping in CIP, and then it's going to end up, below the 1.5.
Let's move it over.
Okay.
And then, not trying to get into all sorts of what-if discussions, but we're sitting in a building that we won't be sitting in next year. And so it may look like, man, we did really good. We've really worked this budget. We can work it more with, a potential policy on reserve and a few other things. You could be sitting here with a $3-4 million expense to tear this down and greenscape.
That's correct. We have the number on that?
It was a little over $1 million is what
Here was $1
Jerry
million?
left to
Yes.
tear this one down.
Was that the greenscape as well?
No. So that was to be teared down. We were talking tiers might be able to participate in doing the
okay.
after redevelopment for a.
So I think what I had heard was 3 to 4, and I'm not saying those are accurate numbers, but let's say it's a $3 million expense. I mean, how long are you going to kind of have that conversation, at the coffee shop of what are you going to do with that old building? I mean, you don't even use it. Y'all still paying for the lights, So you may think in budget needs this next year, one-time expense may be somewhat kind of done if you tackle this one next. Do y'all have anything forecasted? Because we've really covered a lot. COLA, the retiree, pay increases all the way across the board. What else do you guys see we're going to need money for?
Let me also add real quick, you're not limited to one-time costs only on the one-time list. You could put one-time costs on the ongoing list because we always have ongoing one-time expenses. So one thing you could put some one-time costs on the ongoing one because knowing that you're going to have more one-time costs the next year as well because you got the money it shows right here. Mm-hmm. So
I think Laura and I would suggest with the $9 million left, you might just do the 70% COLA.
And be done with
Be
it.
done.
Another $2 million, I think.
Yeah. It's 3.9. 3.9, yeah.
Man, you're
Yes.
taking away the trophy from the next council if you do it all.
Yeah.
You're really running for office here.
They're looking out for you.
Yeah. Well, you can plug it in for a working discussion. We're going to have another meeting over this in 2 weeks, let's say, 2 to 3.
Stephanie, it's
So
3.9.
you can put it in there. Okay. So we've done really good. I do want to take a crack at this reserve because I think it actually might help us when we look at bond rating and how everybody else metrics themselves. I would challenge it and think we may be a little fatter than what they would see typically.
Okay.
And so I'm not saying that I do want to remove those out of reserves. I like reserves. I'm very conservative. But interest in sinking is something that would potentially help future councils.
Mm-hmm.
And right now you just got it sitting in a reserve account that can't really do anything, unless you have an emergency. You start moving that money around so that you have a plan forward. Well, it's $1 million every year that we move out of here, and that's really going to help us in borrowing power one day when we can't get a bond passed or whatever.
Mayor, can I go back for just a second? Did you want us to earmark an amount for that demo of City Hall?
What was the pork funding that you were talking about? Earmarks and pork bellies?
The Cole Stanley demolition project.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Did you have an amount you wanted on that, or?
So it's on the one-time funding?
Yes.
If you would put it over there. Did you move it all over? Oh, no, we're back on it.
I'd put 1.5 until I hear from Jerry. Get some
Yeah,
more
so
details.
put that in there, and that still leaves council $2 million sitting on that side. And are we down to 7.5 on the other one?
No, we were at 7.2.
Okay, 7 and 2. We got 7 and 2 to work with, and we are sitting pretty
Yes.
right now. Great job, staff. Great job, council.
Job, council.
So budgets are not done, but we are done. We are whipped. So that's a long 4 days right there. Okay, Mrs. Stores, what else do you need to cover here? It's 5:07.
So if council would like, we could work maybe through Stephanie to figure out when you all would be available. Let me ask this, Mayor, are you thinking maybe a half-a-day workshop to tie up loose ends? You want to earmark a day and hope we get done in a half a day?
I feel like we could do this in 2 hours.
Okay.
Honestly, and I mean, like we've done a lot of the work here. So you guys are going to bring some stuff back. We're going to continue to want to look at some stuff. So why don't we budget 4 hours and we know it's a 2-hour meeting? So
And
yeah.
we'll order lunch just in case.
When do you want to do this? Are you going
When
to?
would y'all like to do this?
I'd request at least 2 weeks to help as I try to get up to speed with you too.
Let me ask this logistical question. We are targeted right now to bring the first vote related to anything budget at all on, I believe it's on August 13th, but that would only be setting the maximum tax rate, which we would recommend setting the maximum at the voter approval tax rate. So August 13th. And so if council doesn't have any heartburn voting on the top end of that rate prior to us finalizing budget, because you can't go above that rate anyways, since you can't call an election at that point.
Right.
But I just want to make sure that doesn't give anybody heartburn.
Here's an idea.
Okay.
What if we do August 13th, regular meeting, you go ahead and set your not to exceed.
Okay.
What if we do August 27th and we meet at 12 instead of, say, 1:30, and we push exec items, like if AEDC had something or if we knew we had something else, we would just know we're going to have an exec on the 13th, try to get to as many exec items as we need to, but then we're not going to have another exec until like the 10th on general business. We use that exec session, that time, not saying we'd ever do this in exec, but we use that time to do the final of the budget prior to our regular meeting.
Okay.
Does everybody like that? August 27th and August 13th. And then that gets you without having to schedule a special meeting, but still plenty of time if that doesn't work.
Let me check one date real quick.
So what time would we start on the 27th?
I would say 12 to give yourself 3 hours.
Yeah.
Do you think that is not enough, really? Like, legitimately, after all the time we've spent You think we still have something out there we're going to get hung up on?
I don't think so.
Because we could move it up to 11.
We could bring in lunch if y'all want to do like a working lunch
think
that
we
day
do.
or
I
something.
think we do
Okay.
lunch.
So then, do you want to move it back to like 11 that day, or just in case, so everybody has time to run to the restroom before the 3 o'clock meeting, or?
Okay, so we're going to put it in here August 27th at 11.
Okay.
We're calling this, noticing this as a special meeting.
Yes. I thought this was your favorite time of year, Josh. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that day. That's
Yeah, I think we would postpone exec on that day totally and not get ourselves into any of that. So we are August 27th at 11, special budget meeting.
While I have you all here, well, no, but you have wording in it that talks about the tax rate and everything too. We'd have to have it tied down. So I have to, well, we could do our budget hearing on the same date as the tax rate hearing, on the 17th, and that'd give me one more week. Okay. I'm sorry, we're just checking dates because state law has certain posting requirements prior to the public hearings. And so is everybody on track to still do first meeting in September and second reading September 17th? Does that seem reasonable?
Give us those dates again.
First reading would be September 10th, and second and final reading would be September 17th. Or we could do the 17th and the 24th. It's up to you all.
So let's look here. Do we have regular meeting on the 10th, regular meeting on the 24th? So you're
Yes.
calling a special meeting on the
17th. So it's however y'all will need to do public hearings. So we can do them on the 17th and 24th, or the 10th and the 17th. I don't know if y'all have a preference.
Let's do the 10th.
Okay, that's great. That's how I've got it scheduled out. Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have anything they need to cover before we get out of here?
The only oddball question here. So on this remaining working budget, the 7.2, thinking back to the dumpster to solid waste thing, would this say that there was enough money left over to not increase fees? Would that be a feasible option or no?
To fund the CART program and all that? Sure.
Out of your 7.2, 7.3?
So, yeah.
You could if you want.
Stephanie already printed these for me, so you're not allowed to make any changes here.
Need another one.
But
All
in
right,
the
thanks,
follow-up
Melanie.
meeting, we could. So,
Okay.
yeah, I think that's a good discussion. So just to confirm, the 17th was the second special meeting, right?
That is correct. And hopefully,
Did
do
you
you all
put a-
have that on your calendars?
Did you put a time? Are you doing it at 3?
We'll do it at 3.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay. Do I have anything else from anyone else here today? Seeing no one, man, I'd like a motion to adjourn this meeting. Hey, motion this adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second that thing.
Second.
Motion and a second. We're adjourned. Appreciate everyone being here.